Chapter 1643. The dome above the crazy staircase hall looked like a void because it was connected to another space. Following the fall of Yogg-Saron's massive body, there were also countless body fragments falling from the void. There were disgusting fragments as well as shards of fangs that flickered with a metallic luster and were stained with blood. Because of the spatial dislocation, there was a strange error in the transmission of sound. It was not until Yogg-Saron's body fell that the final scream full of hatred and resentment was heard. Suddenly the entire hall shook. It gave people goosebumps all over their bodies. However, this belated scream formed the most distinct contrast with the tragic state of this ancient god. The lower half of Yogg-Saron's body had completely disappeared, leaving only the upper half of his head and most of the largest mouth. On the upper half of the skull, every mouth of different sizes was half open and half closed. There were even unknown substances flowing out of the oral cavities. Almost at the same time that Yogg-Saron disappeared, the immortal guardians on the field all stopped moving. Then, as if weathering, their bodies collapsed without a sound. Their lives had ended as early as 10,000 years ago. It was purely Yogg-Saron's evil divine power that protected their souls that had already begun to decay, constantly replenishing their biological tissues, that allowed these terrible faceless ones to survive until now. As the core Yogg-Saron died, so naturally they also fell. At the same time, the three guardians who had once again lost control also returned to normal. Almost immediately, Freya and Hodir rushed angrily towards the dimensional rift that Yogg-Saron had fallen out of. As soon as they entered, they used powerful Titan magic to sweep away the countless broken limbs and corpses. They were so furious that the onlookers had no doubt that if there were any remnants of Yogg-Saron at this moment, they would not hesitate to start a new round of war. It was just that, it was time to end it. A moment ago the battle on this battlefield was so intense. The next moment, everything returned to silence. This extremely intense contrast gave everyone an illusion that it was unreal. Is Yogg-Saron dead? Kalia walked over and quietly pulled on Duque's sleeve. I can only say that, the core part has been destroyed. Duque smiled bitterly. In Azeroth, the few ancient gods were all classified as aberrations. There was not even a specific race to classify them. No one knew if they could reproduce or if they could resurrect. Back then even the Titans who were omnipotent in our eyes, were unable to completely destroy the few ancient gods, including Yogg-Saron. This time I'm really not sure. I can only say that in the next 100 years, Yogg-Saron probably won't come out to cause trouble again. Duque shrugged. What about 100 years later? I hope I'll still be guarding Azeroth at that time. If we're not here, we can only hope that our descendants can produce another talent who can lead the mortals to kill it again. Duque was right. Unfortunately, Duque was still used to thinking like a mortal and didn't notice his faulty wording. Because of this small sentence, Kalia's face was as red as a steamed prawn, and she had a fever. She lowered her head in embarrassment. On the other side, Tarim walked over. On his shoulder was Mimirin's main body with a rocket backpack. Walking up to Duque, Tarim knelt down on one knee so that his face could be closer to Duque. Duque noticed that Tarim was still clutching his chest. How's your injury? It's nothing serious. As long as I go back to the Temple of Storms, I'll be fine after a few years of recuperation. Thank you for your concern, Tarim answered truthfully. Not only him, but the other two guardians and the 4 guardians of Alcafon's treasury also came over. Thank you and your companions, Duke Marcus. Without your help, Otter would have fallen into that damned evil god's lair. Freya was a little embarrassed, but she still bowed deeply to Duque and the others. Beside her, the other 3 guardians and 4 guardians also bowed in unison. In order to express our gratitude, Yogg-Saron's collection as well as ours, are all yours. Hodir was a man of few words, but when it came to practicality, there was nothing more practical than this. Wow. This feels good. Gavinrad was the first to take the lead and exclaim. Fighting against evil was for the sake of justice and the future of Azeroth, but mortals always needed spoils of war to embellish a great victory. Under Duque's leadership, instigation, the Alliance's powerhouses had long since gotten used to looting wherever they went. If they went through so much trouble to defeat an evil god without any spoils of war, they would probably be able to accept the result, but they would probably grumble about it for a long time when they returned. Okay, everyone take a break. Before Duque could finish, suddenly, his expression changed along with Tarim and the other guardians. At the farthest end of their perception, it was the sky above Otter. Above the sky was the endless universe. At this moment in time, the universe was experiencing an unusual change. It was a staggered layer of space. On the surface, It looked a little like a huge teleportation door that was opening from an extremely distant planet to water. It was just like when Dan used the space coordinates provided by the possessed Medivh and Draenor to use the dark portal to open a space passage between two planets. In reality, in Duque's perception, it was completely different. It was as if the black hole on the other side of the multiverse had suddenly connected to the universe here, and the black hole that should have devoured everything was expelling something. Of course, in astronomy this could also be called a white hole. Some extremely powerful existence was tearing through space, crossing dimensions and rushing here. F***CK. I actually forgot about him. Yes. He was observing Orgaren. He was an observer left behind by the Titans, an imperial envoy who came to purify the world in case the planet was accidentally corroded. In order to prevent Orgaren from discovering his crimes, Loken had modified the data. The observer would only descend when he died, formatting Azeroth so that all living beings would be buried with him. This was the big hole that Loken, whose mind had been completely corroded, had dug for the living beings of Azeroth. Although he knew that in this life, it was Tarim who lured Orgaren away, but Duque still wanted to say to Orgaren, "I bought a watch last year. Damn it, why didn't you come earlier or later? Why did you come out to cause trouble when we were fighting Yogg-Saron? If it was earlier it would have been good to get Orgaren to help fight the ancient gods. If it was later, at least everyone could rest for a while and recover some vitality." This guy appearing at this point in time, it was really amazing. Chapter 1644. Tarim's face turned ashen. Not only him but all the Guardians' expressions turned gloomy. What's the matter? Magni noticed that their reactions were not normal. Freya said something that shocked the Alliance's powerhouses. Letting Yogg-Saron escape is tantamount to dereliction of duty. When the observer Orgaren arrives, he may remove our Guardian qualifications on the spot. By the way, removing our qualifications is equivalent to destruction. Tarim continued, "Remember what I said? If Orgaren determines that planet Azeroth has been completely polluted, he will send a purification signal to the Pantheon, which is to destroy the entire planet." The Alliance's powerhouses were all worried about Tarim's words, but for the transmigrator Duque, he could only play the role of a good actor again. He looked like he had deliberated for a long time before saying these words. What if we guys who don't belong to the Pantheon go and communicate with Orgaren and ask him to give up sending a signal to the Pantheon? As soon as Duque's voice fell, Gavin, Rad, Magni, and the others were already making a ruckus. Even Queen Sylvanas tightened her grip on her divine longbow. If these guys were to really form an empire or something, the name of that empire would be Empire of Troublemakers, right? In the face of this group of bold mortals, or rather, mortals who had become gods, Tarim rolled his eyes. As Odor's guardians, we will decisively kill any existence that does harm to Odor. On the other hand, we have no right to stop you from communicating with the emissaries of the Pantheon. But in case you have a conflict with Orgaren, and Orgaren orders us to purify you, we will not hesitate to obey the order. Because this is our duty. Tarim had a business-like look on his face. Duque bared his teeth. What the hell, Tarim, you're quite sly too. You speak as if you're not the one who delayed Orgaren for so long? Since Tarim was speaking in a bureaucratic manner, it was almost as if he was hinting at Duque and the others. Duque also understood. Duque raised his hand and Atish immediately flew back under his arcane control. He looked at his divine staff and said, "Our communication with Orgaren must be secret and will never be made public. I hope that the Guardians will abide by their confidentiality rules. I'll give you a look and you'll figure it out yourself. We'll beat him up so badly that even his mother won't be able to recognize him. We'll make sure that no one can hear him even if he screams his lungs out. Just pretend to be ignorant." Mimiran's mechanical eyes flickered non-stop. The Titans didn't leave us behind because they didn't expect us to stay the same. They are also eager to see changes and new possibilities, otherwise they wouldn't have arranged for me, the creator. This was also a hint, and several Guardians and Watchers nodded in response. Duque suddenly felt a little admiration for the group of dead people from Pantheon. One had to admit their greatness. The Titans could actually create such a group of powerful creations with self-awareness and self-values out of thin air, yet they had firm wills and scrupulously abided by their duties. Under normal circumstances, the Guardians would never overstep the duties set by the Titans. However, their wills were able to strike a perfect balance between their desires and their duties. The Titans were definitely worthy of the title of creator. "You should get a platinum disc from the Iron Parliament," Mimiran reminded them. "This?" Gavin Rad took it out. "This is called the Archive Data Disc. Mimiran said as if he had no idea what was going on, and then refused to speak again. Duque smiled and patted Gavinrad's shoulder. Everyone understood that this thing was the key to the place where Orgarin descended. However, the Guardians and Watchers could not help Duque and the others against their own Imperial envoy. This was the biggest weakness. Everyone's heart was actually a little uneasy. Duque could not say it out loud. After all, this was quite a taboo. Alright, let's quickly divide Yogg-Saron's collection, then have a good chat with Orgarin. Time is a little tight, so I'll make the decision myself this time. Duque once again acted as the leader of the Black Hand group and went to divide the equipment. Alright, no problem. That's it. This time, there were no tribal powerhouses participating in the battle. They were all on the same side, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. As an ancient god that had lived for tens of thousands of years, especially during the Dark Empire period, Yogg-Saron enjoyed the tributes and sacrifices of countless believers as a god. There were many treasures that it would never use and carried in its portable space. With the destruction of Yogg-Saron's core, this portable space also collapsed. Duque rushed to rescue the items before this small space collapsed. This wave was actually quite rich. Jaina obtained the dagger, Scar of Soul. This dagger was shaped like a double-headed greatsword, but it was actually quite small. There was a green rune energy flowing in the middle that looked like a question mark. No one knew if it came from a warrior who had fought for the Titans back then, because this was a pure Titan rune magic sword. Because it had a structure similar to arcane energy, it could provide Jaina with a large number of additional magic circuits, directly increasing the strength of her spells, casting speed and spell critical rate by quite a bit. Vanessa obtained a Godslayer's Emblem ring. This not only provided her with a large increase in agility, but it was also proof that she had slain a god. Edwin Van Cleef obtained a Kingslayer. Although the name was not nice, the sharp dagger gave him a real boost in attack power. Magni took the king's royal family emblem, without any dispute. This defensive accessory came from an unknown king, and it was stained with blood that could not be washed off. Even after countless years, it still seemed to prove that king's determination to protect his country. Most of Yogg-Saron's drops were loose items. Basically, if anyone saw something suitable, they would raise their hand and equip it on the spot. If they were worried about any curse or unsafe shadow energy residue, they could just ask Freya to purify it. It was a piece of cake. Duque also changed his equipment for the first time in a long time. At the level of a demigod, generally speaking, unless it was a divine artifact, there was nothing worth Duque taking. Whether it was worth it or not was one thing, and whether he wanted it or not was another. Duque obtained the False God's Boots. This wasn't the original name of the boots. History books were written by the victors. Since Yogg-Saron had knelt, it was a false god. There was nothing special about these shoes. The important thing was the extraordinary horror shoulder accessory. Chapter 1645. This epaulette was quite eye-catching. On the inward curved, crescent-shaped epaulette was a pink light shield similar to the outline of the epaulette. This not only provided additional magical defense, but it was also blindingly bright like a neon light. It was as cool as it could get. Back then, the friends who played with Duque had fought over this item countless times. With it, Duke could be considered to have fulfilled a small wish. When the equipment was almost distributed, there was only one accessory left that no one wanted. This thing. Duque saw it and understood why everyone had strange expressions. This small pants-like accessory was the claws of the conquered Yogg-Saron, and as the name suggested, it could summon a tentacle of Yogg-Saron to fight for oneself. Most of the biological tissues that belonged directly to Yogg-Saron had collapsed and died, which was an exception. It was more like a certain mighty power during the Dark Empire had cultivated a part of the detached limb of the god it worshipped through special means, turning it into a single tentacle that obeyed its commands. Hey Duque, didn't you already have one of these last time? Since you like this, why don't you take it and make a pair? When Gavinrad said this, he was completely unaware that almost all the women present were looking at him like he was a cockroach. And then Duque was implicated. It was an awkward but polite smile. Behind his back, Duque wished he could strangle Gavinrad's big mouth. That's right, Duque did get an accessory, a Thun's tentacle, before. If he took the claws of the conquered Yogg-Saron, then he would have two items that were deeply loved by gentlemen. As a result, the way Duque's own harem looked at him changed. One by one their pretty faces stiffened. Silently they all stood together, forming a firm alliance. They were clearly saying, Duque, if you dare use them on us, just wait for the harem to explode. Duque looked back with a despairing look and asked, do I look like such a guy with such a heavy taste? The 5 people at the core turned their heads in unison, looked at Vashj, then looked at Onyxia, and then the 5 of them nodded in unison, clearly saying, "Yeah, that's right." The affairs of the world were unpredictable, and the human heart was unpredictable. "We didn't know you were such a hardcore guy, otherwise we wouldn't have followed you." Woo-woo, Dumuk burst into tears. For a moment of carelessness, he couldn't control himself, and now his world-renowned reputation was lost in a single day. "I don't want to live anymore." "All right. The death of a fellow Taoist is better than the death of me. It's not fair that I'm the only one who fell into the pit." Duque's expression was solemn as he called Gavin, Rad and Kale. "That's over. Now, as the commander of the Alliance, I will give you an arduous and long task. This is for you." After saying that, Duque gave Sithun's tentacle to Kale, that's in Yogg-Saron's claw, to Gavin Rad. Gentleman Dumuk's face was stern. "The Alliance needs you to thoroughly understand these 2 defeated ancient gods and see if there are any remaining living organisms left in the world. Or, you can try to see if you can develop a tool to detect the remnants of the ancient gods. One of you is the Alliance's most revered great paladin, and the other is the wisest Kirin Tor chairman. The Alliance can rest assured by handing this task to you." Gavin Rad seemed to have received an order to immediately do a handstand, and his bitter face revealed clear despair and frustration. On the contrary, Kale, who didn't know what was going on, accepted the task seriously. Phew. With the problem solved, Dumuk let out a long sigh of relief. "All right, let's go have a good chat with Sir Orgarin." After distributing the equipment, everyone was elated, and their combat power increased by another level. Perhaps this was the so-called sharpening the knife while chopping firewood. With Mimiron leading the way, the Alliance powerhouses and Duque's subordinates majestically charged towards the observatory. As an observatory built by the Titan himself, of course, it wouldn't just be a huge telescope or something like that. Although it was called an observatory, it was actually more like a huge astral teleportation center. Stepping into this magnificent and huge hall, one could see many 3-dimensional star charts floating in the void. The spatial passageways connecting the planets were also clearly marked. The moment they saw the observer Orgarin, other than Duque, all the Azeroth powerhouses were stunned. On the surface, Orgarin was a humanoid existence, a standard giant body with a fluttering robe and a clear human face. In reality, no one could tell what kind of existence he was. Because everyone could see through his translucent body, they could see the bones in his body. It was said to be a skeleton, but it was actually a series of connected lines that looked like constellations. These bright blue and white spots of light and light formed an endoskeleton that looked like a matchstick man, supporting the entire huge and seemingly light body. "Should be an elemental creature," Duque concluded. "Who are you?" Orgarin was rather surprised by the arrival of Duque and the other powerhouses. "Where are Odor's protectors? I can feel that they are still alive. Why would they allow you to come here?" Duque stepped out from the crowd, smiling as he bowed deeply to Orgarin. "Hello. Your Excellency Orgarin, please allow me to introduce you. We are the Azeroth Coalition Army. We represent the various native intelligent races that were born on this planet, and we are here to negotiate with you. Those who could become Imperial envoys were no fools." Orgaron's translucent face revealed a rather human-like expression. "Can you first tell me what happened to the ancient evil god Yogg-Saron that was imprisoned in Odor? I can feel its presence, but it is the presence of death. I'm sorry to inform you that it has corrupted the mind of the King of Wisdom, Loken, and controlled him. Then it used Loken's hand to destroy Odor's cage and was freed for a time. However, with the efforts of Odor's protectors and us, Yogg-Saron's core has been destroyed by us." "Oh, that's good news. But what are you doing? Why are you here? Don't think I didn't notice your little trick." Orgarin suddenly became stern. Duque smiled. He did not plan to hide it from the other party. Such a large commotion like the ceiling of space could not be hidden from anyone. "We just hope that we will not be mysteriously purified." "Umph." Orgarin snorted coldly. "I have witnessed countless worlds being baptized by the Creator. The people there accepted their fate without even shedding a single tear. In the time it takes for your mortal heart to beat, countless planetary systems would disappear in a brilliant light. But until now, I have no feelings for them, no sympathy. I can't feel anything. Millions, billions of lives have returned to dust. Why should I agree to your request?" Chapter 1646. Every Azeroth powerhouse was stunned. Arrogance. Arrogance. Boasting of being high and mighty. Was this the observer sent by the Titans? Treating billions of creatures as scum. Although everyone understood this logic, just like how humans regarded ants and other insignificant life forms as nothing, just like how humans felt that slaughtering livestock such as pigs, cows, sheep, and other livestock was a matter of course. After the Guardian's explanation, everyone also knew that planet Azeroth was the Titan's life cultivation ground, but it was really King annoying. Even beasts resisted the hunting and slaughter of humans due to their survival instincts, let alone highly intelligent creatures? Observing Orgeron's mockery, it could be said that he had easily pulled the aggro of everyone present. Towards such an amusing idiot, Duque only wanted to describe him with the words, "You have a lot of ideas, you must be an idiot." Ever since the Dark Portal incident started the Age of Turmoil on Azeroth, the Alliance had always had close cooperation and communication with the Titan Guardians represented by the Temple of Dragon's Slumber. For the sake of Alexstrasza and the other dragon aspects, as long as Orgeron was still a guy who could speak and communicate normally, the native Azeroth powerhouses present would not have done anything extreme to him. Now that Orgeron was courting death, Duque could only chuckle. If this Imperial observer with the Imperial sword was as strong as killed Jaden or Yogg-Saron, then it would still make sense. After all, powerful people naturally had the right to do whatever they wanted. However, Duque knew very well that this guy's level was quite limited. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone was worried that he would issue the purification order at the drop of a hat, which indirectly bound his hands and feet, this guy would probably have turned into ashes long ago. Now, the mana retroaction from Duque's left hand, Atish, told Duque that the space blockade had been completed. The Oscar winner Duque's face darkened. Orgeron, you've already completed the calculation and assessment of Azeroth? Almost as soon as Duque's voice fell, all the powerhouses were shocked. Before coming over, Torim repeatedly emphasized that they had to find Orgeron before he completed his assessment of the planet's condition. He had to convince him to change his mind and not issue the purification order. Now that Duque suddenly asked, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Orgeron, who had light rays from the stars that formed his internal skeleton, still had a rich expression on his half-illusionary face. It's done. I am quite disappointed with the evolution and results of this planet. It had already been 25,000 years. Not only had the perfect creatures that the Titans hoped to see not been bred, even more corrosive, rotten, and ugly creations had been born. What's even more unbelievable is that the Guardians, who were supposed to abide by their duties until the end of the universe, have also fallen. Orgeron said seriously, that's why I came to the conclusion that this planet must be completely purified after 3 minutes in this world. I've already sent my report. You lowly indigenous creatures, just wait for the Pantheon to descend again and then disappear from this universe completely. T. The moment the observer said this, the Alliance experts were the first to explode. Damn it. How can you be so unreasonable and reckless? The Empress Dowager was infuriated. You decided the survival and destruction of billions of creatures on an entire planet with just 3 minutes of observation? Magni's beard was standing on end. What's the difference between you and a destroyer like Sargeras? If the Titans are all like this, then we won't hesitate to fight against the Titans. Sylvanas raised her Solidar Wrath of the Stars, and knocked an arrow made from the power of the stars, aiming it at Orgeron. Faced with the anger of the crowd, Orgeron showed no fear. He stood proudly with his hands behind his back. Foolish indigenous creatures, you know nothing about the power of the Pantheon. What he meant was, the Titans can do whatever they want to you. At this time Duque stepped out from the crowd. Yes, perhaps we don't know much about the power of the Titans of the Pantheon. But we've dealt with the Burning Legion and we know that Sargeras, the Titan warrior of the past and now the fallen Titan of the Burning Legion, has been running amok in this universe for 25,000 years. Not only did he lead the Burning Legion to destroy thousands of planets, but I also know that he fought a fierce battle with the Pantheon back then. When Duque said this, everyone finally saw Orgeron take half a step back. Duque put the most weight on the table. I just want to ask, if the Pantheon is still here, where are the Titans? Are they willing to let the fallen Titan who betrayed them roam the universe freely? Or is the Pantheon actually destroyed? To Orgeron, Duque's words were not only harsh, but also outrageous. Orgeron waved his hand. How dare you? I'm the supreme representative of the Titans. You have no right to ask me any questions. Duque sneered. How many years has it been since you last contacted the Pantheon? It must be 25,000 years, right? If the Titans were still here, we wouldn't have needed to set traps to kill Archimonde and kill Jaden and kick Sargeras into the bottomless abyss. After saying that, Duque opened his hands, and 3 magic images immediately hung above Duque's head, appearing in front of Orgaron. They were Duque stabbing Medivh, who was possessed by Sargeras' soul in Karazhan, Duque stabbing Archimonde to death in Mount Hyjal, Elun giving Kill Jaden the final blow in the Sunwell. This incomparably magnificent and soul-stirring scene made Orgaron tremble with fear. However, Orgaron, who was used to looking down on all beings, was not willing to admit his guilt and weakness. As an observer with his own will, he had long been used to his transcendental status. He would never admit that a native of a planet had the strength to beat the Burning Legion. He still argued, "We can make as many of these fabricated images as we want. And how could the great Pantheon lose to a traitor like Sargeras?" His disdain completely angered the Azeroth powerhouses. The sneer on Duque's face became even more pronounced. "All right then, negotiations have broken down. We can only resort to force." Duque raised his hand and gave a simple order like a mafia boss. "Beat him." This time, to everyone's surprise, the one in the lead was actually Onyxia. "I knew it. That bullsh T Guardian isn't a good thing." Duque stared. "Aren't you mistaken about something?" Chapter 1647. On the surface, what Onyxia said was a paradox. She was a guardian, but she scolded the guardians as bastards. Wasn't that putting herself in a difficult spot? Duke knew very well that rather than saying this female dragon was arrogant, it was more accurate to say that she was resentful. She had been a good villain before, but then she became a traitor. Then the Pantheon Imperial Envoy Orgaron actually said, "You're not a loyal servant, but all the loyal servants of Azeroth are traitors. They want to be purified, GG, and their whole family dead." How could Onyxia take it? Her resentment had reached its peak, and the only thing she could do was vent. Onyxia started to spit. She took a deep breath, a demigod dragon as a spitter. It was a spectacular scene. If it was in the past when she was fighting alone, she would not have used deep breath right off the bat no matter what. Dragon breath needed to store up energy, and if she used up all the fire elements stored in her body in one breath, even with her demigod strength, she would need to store up energy for a long time before she could use deep breath again. More importantly, the alliance was now strong. She had a group of demigods behind her. As expected, the guardians have fallen. How could Orgaron not see that Onyxia was also a dragon aspect that had the status of a guardian, even if it seemed to him that this dragon aspect was a little unofficial? His semi-illusory left arm blasted out a fist of light with psychedelic colors. In the air, there seemed to be something extremely minute that was compressed and exploded in one breath. Its ferocious momentum shocked all the non-tank professions in the alliance. This punch was not simple. Duque narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, "Quantum strike?" As a boss that leaned towards magic, Orgaron's physical attack was not weak. The attack just now was his signature move. On the surface, it seemed like a physical attack, but in reality, Orgaron had mobilized the smallest indivisible basic unit of energy in the air. This kind of power that was close to light energy was already in the category of quantum optics. This move could not be dodged or defended against such a subtle attack on the quantum level. She could only take it head-on. Whoa! Onyxia took the hit head-on. Even though she had thick skin and flesh as a dragon aspect, it still hurt a little. At this moment, the Black Dragon Princess decisively followed her heart. In other words, she was terrified. "Master, this fellow is powerful." After a shout, she decisively dodged her huge body, opening up a path for the follow-up attackers. Duque facepalmed. "Damn it. You're so big yet you're hiding in the corner. I'm also drunk." Duque didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Unfortunately, Duque couldn't pin too much hope on her. If she still retained her former ferocity, then she naturally wouldn't be able to subdue her. Since he was willing to be Duque's mount, he naturally wouldn't be a brave fellow. She couldn't have the best of both worlds. After all, she didn't belong to the Alliance. Since Onyxia had given up the attack zone, there would naturally be powerhouses to take over. The Karaji twin emperors immediately filled in. They were quite active. If they had just subdued him, they would have more or less had other thoughts, but now all those thoughts had faded away. Out of the few ancient gods, 2 had already been killed. What they used to rely on was just the Alliance or Duque's stepping stone. Looking at this momentum, there would be more and more powerhouses joining Duque's command in the future. There was no lack of demigod-level powerhouses among them. If they wanted to keep their position, just relying on qualifications was never enough. They could also see clearly that Duque cherished old friendships. As long as they worked hard, Duque wouldn't mistreat anyone. So they were also working hard. This time, the one who rushed at the front was the Demon Emperor Veclor. Seeing this, Duque just wanted to laugh. He understood the Twin Emperor's thoughts very well. It was nothing more than seeing that the opponent's quantum strike should still belong to the domain of physical attacks. The Demon Emperor rushed up and used his immunity to physical attacks to take advantage. Duque didn't say it out loud. You wouldn't die anyway. As expected, those who wanted to steal a chicken would never be able to please them. Ogren looked like he had transformed into a boxing champion. He immediately hit the Demon Emperor with a left uppercut. This was not a normal giant's punch because the moment Ogren punched, his entire left arm disappeared. When his left fist and left arm appeared out of thin air, he had already punched Veclor's face. Everyone could clearly see that half of the Demon Emperor's face had sunk in. If he was a slightly weaker creature, this punch might have taken his life. Phase punch. This was close to flash, allowing the fist to jump through space in an extremely short distance. It could be said to be the Twin Emperor's nemesis. Oomph. At the same time, the Sword Emperor also grunted. Oh, lifelink? Interesting life form. Ogren let out a mocking laugh. After saying that, he hit another quantum strike on the Sword Emperor's blade that was blocking horizontally. In just a breath's time, the Twin Emperors were directly bounced away. Duque narrowed his eyes. Although he didn't mind his subordinates being beaten up a little, 3 demigods being beaten up like this was a bit of a blow to their morale. Duque raised 2 fingers on his right hand. In the next instant, a huge blazing pillar of fire shot up from the floor of the observatory into the sky. The area of this pillar of fire was enough to cover a basketball court. This time, Ogren didn't have it easy. He rolled awkwardly on the ground and narrowly dodged this attack. This time, Ogren's half-real, half-illusory face no longer had a relaxed expression. It was filled with shock and shame. Duque tilted his head. I'm just a native demigod that you look down on. Duque's words seemed to be mocking himself. In fact, this was even more hurtful. If you, Ogren, had to dodge a mere native demigod's attack so awkwardly, then what are you? Despicable native. How dare you steal the power of the great Pantheon Titan? Ogren's voice had changed. That's right. What Duque used just now was the power of the Titan rune that he learned from Malygos. Although the system elf hadn't completely deciphered it, it had already deciphered 30% of it. This was enough to raise the power of Duque's magic to another level. Steal? No. The previous generation of Azeroth's guardian dragon has fallen. In order to prevent the Titan rune from being lost, the master of the sleeping dragon temple of Azeroth, Alexstrasza, personally asked me to keep it safe for her. Duque chuckled, quietly dragging the Red Dragon Queen down with him. At that time it was a matter of urgency. If they really pursued it later, Alexstrasza would definitely be the scapegoat. However, that would depend on the Titan's ability to pursue it. Chapter 1648. Ogren pulled up a starry curtain to block Vash's arrows while shouting angrily, Quibble! Quibble? That's not like you. Lord Observer, weren't you very arrogant in the beginning? Continue to be arrogant. Duque mocked Ogren as he attacked. Hundreds and thousands of Titan runes appeared in the void behind Duque. Those were not real Titan runes. They were Titan runes branded in Duque's mind. After infusing arcane energy, they appeared in the void through the system elf. One must know that every Titan rune represented an extremely complicated technique for the application of energy. As the saying went, an expert would be able to tell if it was real or not. Ogren's expression turned ugly. He had never imagined that a native creature that was not a creation of the Titans would be able to play around with the Titan's power so smoothly. Akula's Balau Dash, this was a similar pronunciation. Only Duque knew that it meant insignificant skill in the Titan language. Oh, insignificant skill? Then be careful. Don't be defeated by the insignificant skill of a native like me. Duque laughed coldly. Under the power of the weave, dazzling energy arcs flashed out of the void and poured down. Oomph. Ogren suddenly raised his hands, and a huge mysterious energy ball formed in his hands. The energy attack that was pouring down on him was instantly ineffective. The energy ball was like a whirlpool, causing all the energy near it to go out of control and become thinner and longer before being sucked into it. Damn it. It's black hole? Duque cursed. Black hole. Where is it black? Bulang Bronzebeard asked in shock. Duque suddenly came to a realization. The reason why a black hole was called a black hole was because it had the ability to swallow everything, even light. However, the reason why the human eye could see was because the eyeball absorbed light from the outside world, and through the nervous system the photoelectric signal was fed back to the brain. This was the complete seeing. If even light could be absorbed, naturally black holes could not be seen. In fact, Orgeron's black hole was not a real black hole. To be precise, it should be a small space tunnel with some of the functions of a black hole. However, no one could see it. I'll give you some illusions. Otherwise, you'll fall for it if you can't see it. As Duque yelled, he used corporeal illusion to add color to everyone's vision. That thing can be dodged? Magni asked. Under normal circumstances, yes. If the enemy has some kind of destructive move, hiding in there might be a way out. I can sense that the space inside is quite stable. At the very least, we won't die as soon as we enter, Duque said in the Alliance's secret communication channel. At this time, it wasn't just Duque's elemental emissaries, the Alliance's powerhouses also started to rush over. Lowly creatures. You want to hurt me? Ogeron was a little angry. He frowned. In the main hall of the observatory, the star chart that was originally just a projection suddenly moved. Those triangular white rays formed a ball-like cage, wrapping around a transparent ball that emitted white light. These things looked like glass balls with lights on. Foolish natives, play with my living constellations. As the observer's voice fell, the first batch of 12 living constellations that appeared started to rain, secret barrage, on the Alliance's powerhouses. Don't look down on us. Queen Syriana knocked her bow and shot lightning arrows at the living constellations. Since they could not hit Orgeron directly, it was a good choice to get rid of the small monsters on the field. Under her lead, Tyrant and the other archers, as well as Jaina and the mages, all fired at the living constellations. Orgeron's expression became even worse. Natives, you really don't want to give up. Duque tilted his head. No, we should be the ones saying that. Orgeron, please start your performance. Once your performance is over, you won't have a chance to go on stage anymore. Are you calling me a clown? Orgeron's expression became stern. He raised his arm high, and the already illusory space above the observatory was torn apart. In the void tens of thousands of kilometers away, a huge meteorite was suddenly compressed again. The meteorite that was originally the size of a mountain was forcefully compressed to the size of a car under Orgeron's mysterious power. In less than a second, this highly compressed meteorite suddenly crossed the void and entered the atmosphere of Azeroth. As long as it passed through the planet's protective circle, it would be able to jump through space again and crash into the main hall of the observatory. At this moment, Orgeron suddenly noticed that Duque's expression seemed to have changed. Duque seemed to be saying, idiot. Orgeron obviously knew that Duque had a certain level of space magic. However, at this moment, Duque did not dodge. Not only did he not use space magic to seal off the area, he did not even use any defensive measures. He was actually focused on holding back his elemental energy. What was the meaning of this? Whatever. This native demigod was definitely a disaster. He had to kill him first. Just as Orgeron made up his mind, he suddenly realized that something had happened. Inexplicably, he had lost control of this compressed meteorite that came from outer space. In the next second, he angrily looked up at the sky and cursed, "Dragon aspect Alexstrasza. What is the meaning of this? Why did you ban the meteorite that I control from entering this planet? You have no right to interfere with the observer's actions." When everyone heard this, they almost burst out laughing. Needless to say, Duque must have leaked this matter. You *T Imperial Envoy, you dare say that you want to purify the entire planet and even say that you want to execute all the dragon aspects and guardians? If the Titan came personally, the dragon aspects and guardians would definitely have to lower their heads. They might even stretch out their necks to be executed. All of this was based on the absolute order that the Titan had branded into their souls. As long as their souls were not corrupted, they could not do anything to the observer. However, with their own will, it did not mean that they could not cause trouble for the observer. Alexstrasza found a rare opportunity and decisively attacked. I'm sorry. My and the Pentashade Dragon's responsibility is to guard this area and prevent any unknown matter from landing on planet Azeroth to affect the planet's evolution. The Red Dragon Queen's voice suddenly echoed in the observatory's temple. *T. I am the observer. That is my. Alexstrasza interrupted him. If I say that it is dangerous, then it is dangerous. If you want to relieve me of my responsibility, let the Titan personally give the order. This time the Red Dragon Queen was going all out. Chapter 1649. He had seen idiots before, but he had never seen such an idiot. Duque had seen many people who thought they were tigers, but he had never seen someone like Orgarin. Looking at Algarin's angry and helpless face, Duque really wanted to tell him that the master behind him was already a 25,000-year-old pickled cabbage. Oh, it was the super daylily, long gone cold. With great difficulty, Duque managed to restrain himself. After all, at the time of Return of the Legion, mortals still needed the Titans in their soul form to level up. Now that he had offended the Titan, although he wouldn't be looking for trouble in the future, it was still a lose-lose situation. However, Duque did not mind teaching Orgarin a lesson. Without the cosmic bash, Orgarin was like a tiger that had its fangs pulled out. At least he was still a threat, but that was all he could do. The Red Dragon Queen's actions represented the attitude of the Sleeping Dragon Temple. This was definitely a big boost for the Allied army. Of course, Duque would not let go of the opportunity to stab them in the back. Everything that happened here was broadcasted live by Duque to Tarim, Alcafan, and the others. Seeing the excitement on their faces, Duque knew he had achieved his goal. At this moment he really wanted to give Algolan a certificate of merit, because this arrogant Imperial envoy had almost forced all the strong players in Azeroth to work together, regardless of whether they were righteous or neutral. Oh. Magni, who was in his God's Descent state, raised the enlarged Balrog's hammer and stomped hard on the ground. His huge body was like a flying gourd as he leaped over to attack. Orgarin frowned. Of course, he realized that this native mortal had the power of a demigod. Frowning slightly, he raised his arm and took Magni's hammer head-on. The terrifying fire element bloomed on his arm and collided with the Titan's energy that was wrapped around his arm without any room for maneuver. Just based on this attack alone, Magni was undoubtedly at a disadvantage. But now they had the advantage in numbers. So what if they used up a lot of energy? When Orgarin paid the price of weakening his power and unleashed 5 consecutive phase punches in one go, activating the special effect phase ram of this set of skills, sending Magni directly into a small space rift nearby, which was a mini black hole, the Kiraji twin emperors rushed over again. Not only that, Duque used his left hand to gather the elements of the weave and poured a large amount of arcane energy into Hatish, giving Orgarin a knockoff version of Excalibur. To put it bluntly, it was just a highly concentrated arcane light cannon. However, for the sake of showing off, a certain someone yelled EX Curry Stick, which was the name of the move that no one could understand. Orgarin might be able to take on the attacks of other strong fighters. Orgarin did not dare to take on Duque's attack carelessly. He opened up a small black hole and performed a short-distance space jump that was similar to a flash. Humph! There was no end to it. Enough. It's really enough. All of you who are filthy and go against the will of the Supreme Pantheon Titan shall be purified here. Orgarin's illusory body emitted the brightest light since the start of the battle. His outer outline became more and more transparent, and the stars that made up his internal skeleton and the light that connected these stars became more and more dazzling. As the light grew brighter, his huge body slowly rose into the air. He's using an ultimate move. Theon shouted, almost subconsciously activating his holy shield. However, the next moment, the Empress Dowager realized that she could not hold on any longer. This kind of terrifying attack was definitely not something that the holy shield, that he had condensed with his mere spiritual energy, could block. In the face of a higher level of mysterious power, the Holy Knight's invincibility was nothing but a joke. On the surface, Duque was fighting with Orgarin for control of the surrounding space, and he was still accumulating mana to attack Orgarin. In fact, the drama queen Duque was already acting. Hide in his black hole. Almost every evil master had an ultimate move that could kill people instantly. If they could not dodge it, they would be dead. The well-trained Alliance masters quickly gave up on their targets and rushed into the black hole's devouring range. Under normal circumstances, being sucked in would definitely be fatal. When Duque rushed in with Atish in hand, everyone was shocked to find that the black hole, which looked like the stomach of some creature, had stabilized. Only a few small black balls of light swam in the space. Don't touch the dark matter. Actually, even without Duque's reminder, everyone would instinctively avoid these things. With Duque's reminder, everyone was just more careful. The experts of the Alliance entered. Vashti returned to her human form and entered. Even Onyxia in her human form rolled in. Outside the field, looking at the empty observatory hall, Orgarin was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He had used the ultimate move, Big Explosion, to clear the field. He had even prepared a backup plan to destroy the space rift that Duque had dug out. Who knew that Duque would use the small black hole he had summoned to hide? Even if it was only for a short while, it was enough. The process of energy deposition was very difficult to reverse. It was just like after a nuclear reaction started, it was impossible to stop it immediately. It could only slowly cool down and slow down until it finally calmed down. On the field, not all the enemies had run away. The Karaji twin emperors and a few elemental emissaries were still attacking Olgarin. However, those with a bit of eyesight could see that the Gemini and the others were already gone. Their souls had returned to the magic net. Here, it was just an energy body that was controlled by them and had the same appearance as them. Damn. Olgarin's ultimate move finally exploded. Originally, it should have been a terrifying explosion like a nuclear explosion. Under the double effects of Olgarin's conscious retraction and the space lock that Duque had set up earlier, although big explosion was powerful, it did not even shatter the observatory that had been strengthened by the Titan rune sequence. The smoke and dust from the explosion was quickly swept away by a storm. When Olgarin saw the Azeroth masters led by Duque standing in front of him unscathed, the Lord Observer's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Duque had an extremely confident smile on his face. He curled his lips and said, "Do you have any other moves, Lord Observer? If not, I have a song for you. The name of the song is Cold." Behind Dooku there was a group of animals with an aggressive aura. Chapter 1650. Without waiting for Orgaren to explode his small black hole and force the strong ones out, everyone had already rushed out and swarmed him. Onyxia once again took the lead with a dragon, but Vash's lightning magic arrived first. When a lightning snake as thick as a one-way street directly struck Olgarin's body, the explosive lightning energy directly caused the observer to grimace in pain. Only at this moment did the Black Dragon Princess's attack connect perfectly and arrive straight at him. She did not take a deep breath like her signature move. Instead, she swung her tail in a large way that was close to drifting. The dragon's entire body came to a sudden stop 15 meters in front of Orgaren. Then, the huge tail that was as thick as the pillar of the temple drew a golden arc in the air and smashed into Orgaron's left neck. Ugh! Even with his special constitution, Orgaren, whose body was half real and half intangible, was at a great disadvantage under the Black Dragon Princess tail attack that was filled with highly concentrated fire elements. His face was distorted due to the pain, and it perfectly portrayed the sorrowful cry that should have been loud in his heart. In the next moment his entire body was smashed into the air. The high-purity fire elements that were released made him look like a huge torch that fell from the sky. The light from the fire illuminated the hall and reflected on the faces of all the strong ones in Azeroth. Without giving him a chance to catch his breath, Sword Emperor Vecnolus pressed forward and swung his Karaji Emperor sword in a counterattack that was almost like an uppercut. In the end it left a deep wound on his chest. It looked like an illusory and useless wound, but the Nephilim Emperor Vecnolus, who was connected to the Sword Emperor, immediately pounced forward and shot a shadow arrow at the wound. This was a demigod attack. If it was calculated according to the levels in the game, this was at least a level 50 shadow arrow. It was not a terrifying damage that the players at the current stage could deal. The Nephilim Emperor immediately pushed away after using his full strength, and a translucent figure appeared in his empty spot. It was Duque's subordinate, the chief of the Weave, Khadgar. He existed as a pure spirit and he had broken through with it. With no hope of reviving, Khadgar focused on training. With his authority in the Weave that was second only to Duque, Khadgar's current strength was above Jaina and Kale, that's. Without using any staff or weapons, Khadgar thrust his illusory arms directly into the gaping hole in Olgarin's chest. Bright purplish-blue veins of the Weave extended out from the void, converging on Khadgar's hands like rivers flowing into the sea. Then they crashed into Olgarin's body like a tidal wave. Ah! Orgaron's huge and illusory body trembled as he screamed. "Bastard native, do you think that you will be forgiven for your actions? Forgiven?" Duque's voice suddenly rose an octave. "We did nothing wrong, why should we be forgiven? We protect our world and at the same time, attack the enemies of the Titans of the Pantheon. I stabbed Sargeras, stabbed Archimonde, lured killed Jaden to death, and even Thun and Yogg-Saron, who the Titans wanted to get rid of but didn't dare to, were all killed by us. What a joke. I just want to ask, we were wrong." Heaven. Inside. Orgaren was speechless. At this point, how could he not know that he was wrong? If Azeroth was a planet with only primitive single-celled organisms, there wouldn't be any protests from the natives even if he destroyed 100 million of them. Because those organisms only had survival instincts, they wouldn't have the concept of a world. Azeroth was different. It was a world with a large number of highly intelligent organisms, and the strongest among them had evolved to the point where they could stand shoulder to shoulder with the guardians created by the Titans. As an observer, Orgaron determined that this planet was heavily polluted and needed to be purified and destroyed based on the one-sided data. He ignored the series of efforts made by the natives and mortals. This meant that he was destined to stand on the opposite side of these strong natives. How could he not know that he was going to lose this fight? Subconsciously, the words "run away" appeared in his mind. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it well. Hey, you want to leave so soon? You can leave if you want, but please leave a correct evaluation for our planet first. That was what Duque said, but doing it was another matter. On his right hand, the Song of Light and Shadow exploded with the brightest golden holy light so far. Duke's entire body turned into an arrow of light, crashing towards Olgarin. An even bigger energy impact was produced. At that moment, the entire observatory older, and even the entire world seemed to have darkened. All the strong ones could see was a golden light so bright that they couldn't look at it directly. The most dazzling golden light ball suddenly exploded in all directions with Orgaron's right shoulder as the center. After that, a dazzling golden light covered the heavens and the earth and enveloped everything. There was no sound of explosion, but it felt as if they were thrown into a vacuum. Therefore, the holy and glorious golden world suddenly became quiet. The holy light wave instantly swept through everything. The first to be affected was Orgaron's activated constellations, and these high-energy bodies were instantly turned into ashes. Unexpectedly, none of the strong ones from the Alliance were affected by the golden light. It was unknown if it was because Duque had precise control over his power, or because the holy light would not hurt them in the first place. No one died because of it. The light slowly dissipated, and when everyone's vision returned to normal, they saw Orgaron lying on the ground like a dead dog. Duque had one foot on Orgaron's chest, and the spiral sword in Duque's right hand had a long golden light extending out. After the golden light pierced through Orgaron's chest, it suddenly split into two. Like tree roots, it wrapped around an illusory heart that was still beating rhythmically. What are you doing? I'm an observer from the Pantheon. Ah, everyone saw Duque's right hand clench, and the golden light was like a claw that fiercely scratched Orgaron's illusory heart. The pain caused Orgaron's entire body to curl up. Duque had a righteous look on his face. He looked like the combination of all the righteous heroes in history. Unfortunately, what he said was completely different. All intelligent beings in the Azeroth respect the Pantheon, but that doesn't mean we will accept unfair treatment. We only hope that you can revise your report and pass the truest information to the Titans. After saying that, the magic mirror that appeared above Duque's head played the heroic team's achievements one by one. After defeating the Burning Legion, they defeated the Scourge Army and the Ancient Evil God. Chapter 1651. Olgaron's mouth moved for a long time, but he couldn't say anything. Before Duque could do anything, the guys below started to make a ruckus. Gavinrad shouted, "Boss, do it. There's no point in keeping this scourge alive. We'll go down the crazy stairs and pull out 2 of Yogg-Saron's teeth. We'll just kill him and blame it on Yogg-Saron." Beside Gavinrad, Irel's mouth was wide open. She really wanted to ask if this first-generation Holy Knight, who was known as one of the 5 Silver Sages and had a high status in the Alliance, was a fake? Or was his conscience eaten by a dog? Gavinrad winked at her, and Hoof didn't know what to do. Gavinrad wasn't stupid, and the others were good actors too. Wasn't it just acting? Who wouldn't? Magni shouted, "We, the beings of Azeroth, are fighting on the front lines against the Burning Legion. This guy claims to be an emissary of the Pantheon, but he wants to do what the Burning Legion has been trying to do for 10,000 years. Destroy Azeroth. Could this guy actually be an accomplice of the fallen Titan Sargeras?" Olgaron's body trembled when he heard this. His power came from the Pantheon. Without the Titans, he was just a stronger fighter. In front of giants like the Pantheon or Sargeras, he was nothing. The label of traitor was too heavy. He couldn't afford to bear it. "How can you slander me like this? Before Olgaron could finish, Duque pinched his heart again. His soul trembled in pain. Queen Sylvie put her hands on her hips and leaned on her divine longbow, looking majestic. "Don't talk nonsense with him. Anyone who tries to destroy Azeroth is our enemy. Kill him. I still need a few divine weapons." As soon as she said this, Olgaron was shocked to find that the mortals were looking at him with burning eyes. It was desire. It was greed. It was the victors declaring their possession of the losers' belongings. The group of people repeatedly glanced at him with blazing eyes that were like volcanic eruptions. It was as if they were discussing how to slaughter this pig, not how to deal with a noble emissary of the pantheon. Olgarin shivered and shrank back. In the end, it was because he was too arbitrary. Since he really had the strength to defeat the Burning Legion's bosses and kill the ancient evil god, he would receive the corresponding respect even in the pantheon. Coupled with the dragon aspect's complaint, even if he brought the case to the pantheon temple, he might still be at a disadvantage. Most importantly, he really hadn't seen the Titans for 25,000 years. This was what he felt the most guilty about. Alright. I'll rewrite my report, so please let me go first. Olgarin tried to remain calm. Rewrite? There was no need to go through so much trouble. I'll give you a script and you can just read it. With that, Duque actually took out a glittering script written in the Titan language. What is this? Olgarin was even more afraid now. This is the report line of Lord Olgarin, who was moved by the courage of mortals and their love for life. Duque spouted nonsense with a straight face. Duque's subordinates and the group of Alliance powerhouses all burst out laughing. Moved my ass. It was obvious that they had been forced by these greedy and capable Azeroth players. On the other side, Olgarin almost exploded in anger. If it wasn't for Duke giving him a hard kick to make him realize his position and situation, he might have really flipped out like an idiot. Read it. Duque was obviously saying, please start your performance. Olgarin trembled, and his originally translucent blue face seemed to become even more transparent. I've witnessed countless worlds being baptized by the Creator. The people there accepted their fate without even shedding a single tear. In the time it takes for a mortal's heart to beat, countless planetary systems would disappear in a brilliant light. But until now, I don't have the slightest bit of emotion or sympathy for them. I can't feel anything. Millions, billions of lives turned to dust. If they had your tenacity and unyielding spirit, if they had your passion for life, the result might have been very different. Perhaps it's your imperfections that allowed you to have free will, allowing you to face everything that seems to be accidental. You've done what the Titan's perfect creation could not do. You've defeated the Burning Legion's attack, defeated the ancient evil god's counterattack, and protected this world from the violent elemental lords and dark forces. I've rewritten the reply message. Your planet will be spared. I can no longer blindly believe in my own calculations. I've suffered the final backlash of the ancient god Yogg-Saron. I'm heavily injured and lack the strength to send this message. You'll have to work hard. Find a place with sufficient energy close to the sky and send my message back to the Pantheon. When Olgarin finished reading the entire report, he looked at Duque, who looked like he had finished recording. He had completely lost his temper and collapsed on the ground like a dead dog. His ashen face was filled with despair. You're not a Titan's creation. How did you learn such complicated Titan language? Hee. Is it complicated? Alright, I guess it's complicated. Even with my intelligence, it took me a whole month to understand it. Dumuk accidentally showed off again. Jaina looked at him with eyes that were filled with fanatical admiration. After all, even the simplest Titan rune contained small runes that could easily lead to hundreds of millions of different permutations and combinations, triggering different effects. Duque claimed that he only took a month to understand it. What was he if not a god? Olgarin was so shocked that he could not speak. I used nearly 1,000 years, but the observer quickly came to his senses. I've already done as you said. What are you going to do with me? Are you going to kill me? Kill you? No. How is that possible? You're a noble emissary of the Pantheon. How can a native like me do anything to you? Duque said righteously. He did not even look at who was rubbing mud on the other person's chest. We have a common enemy with the Pantheon, Sargeras and his Burning Legion. So we're natural allies. In order to prevent the Pantheon Titan from finding the way to Azeroth, I hope that the observer can come to my wizard tower for a while, set up a space beacon, and understand the situation in Azeroth. Chapter 1652. Olgarin rolled his eyes. He did not believe a single word that Duque said. So what if he objected? He was the meat on the chopping block. Duque could do whatever he wanted to him now. Moreover, he had offended all the dragon aspects and guardians of Azeroth. Even if he screamed his lungs out, no one would come to his rescue. Olgarin did not say anything. He accepted his fate. Down below, Imriel was stunned. She murmured, I suddenly understand why Duke Marcus is the leader of the Alliance. Of course. Wuxia and the other queens puffed out their chests proudly. Duque could be the leader because he could lead the Alliance to victory after victory, and because he could push the Alliance and even the world forward. At the same time, most importantly, Duque would always stand on the side of the Alliance, seeking the greatest benefits for the Alliance and moving towards the brightest future. This was the core reason why no one dared to challenge Duque's leadership ever since he took over the leadership of the Alliance from the dead Terinas. The outcome was set and Olgarin could no longer act tough. Shrink. With a command from Duque, Olgarin shrunk to the size of a human. If he put on a wizard robe and a hood, no one would be able to tell that he was not a human at all. In the magical communication network, Tyrion, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly asked, "Is it appropriate?" It sounded like a random question, but everyone knew what Tyrion was asking. Tyrion had never been the head of a country. At best, he was a general in name. However, his special status meant that his words could not be ignored. Duque pondered for a moment, and finally said tactfully in the communication channel dedicated to the leader of the Alliance. "Actually, when I returned to the ancient war, I had already found a large number of relics from the Pantheon when I sneaked into the Twisted Nether. I even found some footage of Sargeras attacking the Pantheon. Unfortunately, the elemental interference there was very strong, and many laws did not apply. I could only use dark energy at that time, so I could not record the footage." When Duque said that, the entire magic network was dead silent, as if nobody was listening at all. After a long time, Theon finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. "Are the Titans all dead?" "I can only say, it's very likely, yes. At the very least, it was the destruction of the physical body. Otherwise, there was no way to explain how the Burning Legion could run amok in the universe for 25,000 years. However, the Titans are powerful and great. I believe that they are still hiding in some corner of the universe as souls or in some special state, quietly waiting for an opportunity." At that, Duque's voice became impassioned and clear. "I believe that planet Azeroth, which has nurtured countless intelligent life, has a decisive force or opportunity that could change the fate of the war against the Burning Legion. Otherwise, there's no way to explain why the Burning Legion would never forget Azeroth in the past 10,000 years. Even Sargeras didn't hesitate to use possession to infiltrate this place. I believe that our homeland will very likely become the battlefield for the final battle against the Burning Legion. Therefore, for the continuation of our race, for the continuation of our civilization, the burden on our shoulders is very heavy, and our mission can be said to be arduous and long. I believe that when the Titans discover everything here, they will not hesitate to cross the distant interstellar space to come to Azeroth and fight side by side with us. Just like what we have been doing with the Sleeping Dragon Temple and the Watchmen. So, please don't worry. Continue to fight for the future of Azeroth." Good. Theon was the first to cheer. Then it was Duque's harem, Magni, Varian, and the alliance leaders of the online alliances who all cheered in unison. Olgarin didn't understand what was going on with the group of mortals around him. He couldn't understand why they suddenly became so outstanding and excited. "It's okay. I just announced to them that the Pantheon will still stand on the same side as us against the Burning Legion," Duque said casually. Olgarin was stunned at first, but then he nodded helplessly. He didn't know much about the war when Sargeras rebelled. After Sargeras raised the flag of rebellion, he was sent to the distant depths of the universe to carry out orders. As an observer, his mission was incomparably heavy. The number of planets in the universe that could support life basically corresponded to the number of Titans' footprints. Even if 1/10,000th of the planets were in trouble, it would be enough to make him busy. When he came to his senses, he was shocked to realize that it had been a long time since he received any communication from the Pantheon. It was purely the duty that was imprinted in his mind that drove him to go on interstellar journeys again and again. "Is there anything else you want me to do?" Olgarin asked with his head lowered. "Speaking of which, there is." Duque's smile became mysterious. Soon, Duque brought the captive Olgarin to the stairway of madness. First, he made him witness the death of Yogg-Saron's core biological tissue, and then introduced him to the four Guardians of Odor. This scene was naturally extremely awkward, because the four Guardians all knew that Olgarin's first report was to impeach them for dereliction of duty. He requested the Pantheon to cleanse Azeroth and destroy them as well. Tarim and Hodier, who had a slightly bad temper, looked at Olgarin as if he was their enemy. If it wasn't for the Guardians' restriction that forbade them from attacking the Observer, they would probably have beaten Olgarin up. The four Guardians of the Alcaphon treasury had a similar attitude. Freya, who had a good temper, also didn't give Olgarin a good look. Only Mimirin's electronic eyes flashed, and no one knew what this mechanical dwarf was thinking. Fortunately, the main point now wasn't for Olgarin to hold hands with these Guardians and become good friends again. But these, what are these? Duque took out a large pile of fragments of different shapes and sizes and placed them in front of Olgarin, asking even though he already knew the answer. Some of these fragments looked like yellow bronze pieces, and some looked like broken pieces of green glass lamps. The only thing they had in common was the faint aura of life that emanated from them. This should be a life element divine artifact, Freya said with certainty. Olgarin's voice seemed to be a little dry. If I'm not wrong, this should be Valinor. Valinor? That Valinor? Olgarin's answer evoked a distant memory of Freya. Chapter 1653. As an ancient being in Azeroth, Freya was also very knowledgeable. Legend has it that Eonar, one of the titans of the Pantheon, personally forged Veronel and gave it to the first Earth Spirit King of Azeroth, Uriel Stoneheart. Through this hammer, Uriel can create new Earth Spirits and grant them life. Freya sighed at this point. Unfortunately, in the first war between the Earth Spirits and the Iron Dwarves, Veronel shattered. Legend has it that the remnants of this weapon were lost in the war. I didn't expect them to return to us. This is really... Tarim scratched his head. Where did these fragments come from? Mimiron was extremely calm. Every year, I organize a large number of mechanical gnomes to go out and collect metals for me to develop new equipment. The other 3 guardians, can it be repaired? Magni asked tentatively. At the mention of the hammer, the violent men of the Alliance were itching. Magni and Bulang couldn't control themselves when the name of Uriel Stoneheart was mentioned again. The dwarves originated from the Earth Spirits. Although they were a mutated race after being cursed by the flesh and blood, their ancestors would never mistake it. This was their ancestors' divine artifact. Duque knew what was going on with Veronel, and he knew that this thing had no fate with these dwarf leaders, but he couldn't say it. Orgarin glanced at the dwarf king and shook his head. Through the conventional means that actually exist in this world, the possibility of successfully repairing Veronel is infinitely close to zero. Mimiron said, "We can let Odor's central computer system test it." The test results left most people scratching their heads. Beep. Analyzing the possible repair methods in theory, please wait. After a long wait of 10 minutes, Odor's central computer finally gave an answer. In the body of unknown life sample XYZ10086, in theory, liquefying it with extremely acidic gastric juice has a 1.23% chance of fusing it back together. What the hell is XYZ10086? Magni asked. Lost data. Seeing that the reconstruction of the divine weapon had reached an impasse, Duque smiled and revealed a spoiler. Isn't that simple? Just throw Yogg-Saron's stomach. Didn't that guy's body ooze a lot of acid, so Hodier had to cover it with ice? Everyone came to a sudden realization. There was nothing more powerful than the stomach acid of the demon of 1,000 throats. Yogg-Saron could eat and digest. In fact, this was the only correct answer. But Magni was a little worried. What if the acid of Yogg-Saron is too strong and completely dissolves the fragments? Duque's expression did not change. Magni, wake up. First of all, Earth spirits were not the same as dwarves. Second, the dwarves never had Valinor. Third, even if it was a holy relic of the dwarves, they would not be able to defeat it. We are about to face the Lich King, and for the sake of the bigger picture, we will only hand it over to the most suitable person. Bulang, who was behind Magni, tugged at his armor. Magni suddenly came to a realization. He knew that he was a little possessed. Shame. I've thought too much at once. This is not what a leader of the Alliance should do. I apologize to everyone. The Dwarf King was very straightforward and immediately apologized. The dwarves were mostly straightforward and there was nothing to hide. This attitude of knowing one's mistake and being able to correct it was immediately exchanged for the smiles of old comrades. Duque, do you know something? Jaina sensed something. I don't know, but I deduced. Since this hammer could create life when it was given to Uriel Stoneheart, this divine relic should have nothing to do with attack or defense. Duque's deduction was reasonable and convincing. Magni's face fell on the spot. However, everyone could tell that he was actually pulling a prank from this extremely exaggerated expression. He had completely let go of himself. Perhaps this fellow had always had the dream of being a berserker with 2 hammers in his hands, a green dragon on his left and a white tiger on his right. Duque was absolutely sure that in Magni's heart, the 2 hammers definitely did not include a healing hammer. That's right, Veronel Ancient King's hammer was a hammer used for healing. In the Alliance of Heroes, not many people were suitable for it. This was decided by its special effect. In the game, the user's healing spell had a certain chance of triggering the Ancient King's blessing, giving the target a layer of shield that absorbed damage equivalent to 15% of the healing the target received for 15 seconds. This was equivalent to giving the target an additional shield that did not overlap with Word of Truth shield when healing. It was extremely powerful. And Duque guessed that that was only the effect of mortals using it. If it was a high-ranking cleric who was proficient in healing magic, it could break through the 15% limit. In any case, if the fragments of the divine relic were not made into divine relic, then it was just a pile of meaningless collectibles. The Alliance was not extravagant enough to keep the weapons in the warehouse, and put a pile of divine relic fragments in the museum to be put on display as holy relic, or something. Let's do it. Under the watchful eyes of a group of people who claimed to be witnessing history with their own eyes, but were actually gossips, the guardian of the Church of Life, Freya, personally presided over the divine relic fusion ceremony began. In fact, in order to boost the morale of the Alliance, Dumuk even used magic to broadcast the process of the divine relics recasting to the entire Horde Alliance. Only a few leaders of the Horde could see it, while the Alliance broadcasted it to the entire region. In the magic projection, the famous anchor, Sally Whitemane, explained with a sweet female voice that was slightly excited and impassioned. Now I'll be broadcasting a piece of good news. In the battle that has just ended, the Alliance of Heroes and the Guardians of Oder have successfully defeated one of the 5 ancient gods, Yogg-Saron. Everyone, please watch. Along with the camera, whether it was the Alliance citizens far away in the Eastern Kingdom or the soldiers fighting on the front lines of Northrend, they all saw the image of that extremely terrifying monster. The fangs on that half-open mouth still flickered with a terrifying dark light. Those sharp fangs that could easily bite through the deck of a flying battleship formed the clearest contrast with Sally's petite body. In the process of collecting the spoils of war, we found some fragments of the divine relic. Now Her Excellency Freya, the Guardian of Oder, is helping us recast this divine relic. No one knows whether it will succeed or not. I only know that if the divine relic is recast, the strength of the Alliance of Heroes will be further enhanced. Sally's words made the hearts of the people hooked. Within the Alliance, every magic projection was packed with people, and in specific town squares, there was a sea of people, causing the city guards to be mobilized to maintain order. Chapter 1654. Wow. What a terrifying monster. Did His Majesty really fight against such a monster? Holy light. His Majesty is really extraordinary. Looking at the ferocious and terrifying Yogg-Saron even after death, the people and soldiers all pointed at it. Then they saw a female giant who was also 10 stories tall. That's a giant. A little boy exclaimed. What a beautiful female giant. A little girl exclaimed at Freya. That's also one of the guardians of Azeroth. He's allied with us to protect the world. Be respectful. Their mothers held their children and explained patiently, if you grow up and want to fight alongside the guardians to protect our village, you must be as strong as His Majesty. The children nodded, not really understanding. When they saw Freya throw the fragment of the divine artifact into Yogg-Saron's mouth, a terrifying acid mist appeared, which was then suppressed by Freya's Titan rune power. It churned and merged again, and finally, a hammer glowing with a mysterious green glow floated up from the acid. The entire Alliance was in an uproar. The Averinel Ancient King's hammer had an eye-shaped handle that seemed to be inlaid with copper. There was actually nothing between the handle and the hammerhead. A group of mysterious Titan runic magic circle emitted a warm green glow, maintaining the handle and the head of the hammer with a mysterious and profound energy. On the head of the hammer, which looked like a mysterious vessel, there were a few green hemispherical balls wrapped in bronze edges. Not only did these green hemispheres emit a charming glow, but there were also 2 earth spirit relief sculptures on both sides of the hammer head. They would rise from the hammer from time to time and rotate counterclockwise around the hammer head. It looked really cool. Aw, look, it's a divine artifact. I never thought that I would be so lucky to see the birth of a divine artifact in my life. That was the call of the ancient times. That was the proof of power. That was the glow of life. In the eyes of the people and the soldiers, it was a symbol of glory. Looking at it, the people suddenly felt that their hard work in 3 shifts was worth it. Looking at it, the soldiers were even more convinced that it was worth it for them and their comrades to shed blood. Everyone couldn't help but tear up. Far away in the Kalimdor continent, in the main hall of Agramar's Valley of Heroes, Sal, Wajin, Kane and other tribal chiefs gathered together. They looked at each other and remained silent for a long time. Which divine artifact is this? Sar asked solemnly. The 5th. Wajin's voice was emotionless. It's the 5th round. Sal sighed. Not counting the ones he forged or obtained, this was indeed the 5th one. The first was the wind sword, the second was the Balrog hammer, the third was a Tish, and the fourth was Solidar. Although Azanatha's dual blades were also artifacts for the sake of the future, Duque did not order for Illidan's weapons to be confiscated. Instead, he sealed them away from the cage where Illidan was imprisoned. He would be lying if he said he wasn't jealous. Sal couldn't even fool himself. However, what right did the Horde have to take such enviable spoils of war? There was no way he could snatch it. The gap between the combat power of the Alliance and the Horde was already very large. In terms of high-end combat power, the Alliance had a bunch of demigods, and now the Horde, well, King Gruul was half a demigod, but unfortunately he was still disobedient and had no concept of the Horde. In the mortal army, the gap in combat power was no longer the same. Large-scale modern firearms could definitely beat the Horde to a pulp. If it was a cooperation, the Horde's contribution was so small, how could they ask for it? In the past, there were at least a few chiefs who went out to represent them. This time, there was only a Gurus and a little Seraphar. It was understandable that the Alliance didn't want you to join the hero group. If you couldn't even move an army, where would you find the spare heroes to break through? Just thinking about it was discouraging. Sal looked around. In the Hall of the Chiefs, an Astrian who was sitting on a white bone chair was an illusion. Sal noticed that since the incident at the Sunwell on the Alliance's side, His Excellency the Sun King had become neurotic. He refused to come to the Hall of the Chiefs and used various reasons to avoid it. The tasks assigned by the Horde to the Forsaken were also evasive. They were absolutely unwilling to send manpower unless it was absolutely necessary. Although Sal still hadn't figured out what sinister thoughts the former Sun King had that caused him to hide in his new Undercity in Winterspring even at the risk of offending the great chieftain, it didn't stop Sal from being extremely vigilant towards him. If the Horde wasn't in extreme trouble, Sal would have crusaded against the Forsaken. Next to the Seat of Bones, the Goblin Trade Prince Galavix's mentality was the best to understand. He had an expression of admitting that he had been cheated by the Horde. For high-tech things, it was impossible to count on the orcs, trolls, goblins, and taurens. The Horde could only rely on the more civilized goblins. Unfortunately for the stingy goblins, this was no longer a blood transfusion but a cut of flesh. After joining the Horde, the Rusted Water conglomerate lost its neutral position. Now the Alliance didn't even look for the Rusted Water conglomerate for occasional business. The most frequent customer was the Hot Sand conglomerate of Gadget-san. Seeing his fellow goblins making a lot of money, Galavix was very depressed. His heart was completely itchy. In the hall, the largest chair originally prepared for the King of Galan, Gruul, was not taken seriously by the other party from the beginning. Gruul had sat on it 2 or 3 times and each time he was impatient. If the Horde didn't develop well, the people would scatter and it would be difficult to lead the team. After discussing the daily affairs of the Horde, the leaders dispersed and Sal let Wajin stay. No one was surprised. Wajin was now the second in command of the Horde and Sal's most valued think tank. What do you think of the Alliance's strength? Wajin's wise eyes flashed and the words that came out of his mouth were thrilling. The Horde is standing on a crossroad. One is to send all the troops and strong people of the Horde in every war, and while the Alliance leader is still Duke Marcus, fully integrate into the Alliance and implement a complete great integration. Sal didn't comment but asked lightly, what's the second way? Find a strong reinforcement, at least one that can resist the Titan Guardians in Azeroth, and then take advantage of the Alliance's endless war to directly attack. Although Wajin's voice was calm, every word was cruel and bloody. Thrall stood with his hands behind his back and looked into the distance. From the King's Valley, he could see that Agrima was still expanding, but there was no sign of prosperity on the faces of the tribe members. He suddenly asked, is there no third way? With my wisdom, no. Chapter 1655. On Otter's Staircase of Madness, a group of Alliance powerhouses were watching. Oh, Hammer. The members of the Hammer Gang all acted like they were in high school. Oh, it's over. It's a healer. When Freya explained the Hammer's special effect, the Hammer members immediately shriveled. Oh no dash. Although the Alliance's hero squad was based on seniority, they did not steal equipment from other professions. This was the biggest principle. First of all, the Paladins had no temper. Although there were many Paladins in the hero squad who could fight, tank, and heal, almost every Paladin had a violent heart. They were all clerics, but those who truly focused on spreading the holy light ran to be priests. In the last few large-scale team battles, Riadaline, who was the weakest among them, was the one who went to be a healer. Queen Sylvie secretly told Duke that Riadaline was reluctant to do it, but she couldn't beat the other animals. There were no shamans in the hero squad, and there were originally 2 druids. One was Malfurion, who was now asleep, and the other was Fandral Staghelm, who was also a violent maniac. Without orders, he would turn into a bear and charge at the enemy with his claws. And considering that he had a rebellious bone in the back of his head, that left the priests. In fact, there was no need to choose. There were only 3 priests. Benedettas was also a rebellious fellow, and was the first to be eliminated by Duque. Sally Whitemane did not have enough seniority. The only choice was, Kalia, you take this hammer. Duque did not avoid suspicion and directly appointed her. Me. Kalia was quite surprised. This queen who had always maintained a pure heart had such a soft personality. She did not fight for anything and had no greed at all. In a sense, her entire life was passive. Because of her kind heart, she was very popular within the alliance. Kalia was not at all prepared for Duque's appointment. Duque said with a serious face in a voice that every leader could hear, the alliance needs to move forward, and every alliance member needs to see the flag that leads them forward. There shouldn't be just one flag like this. Even if one flag falls in the face of evil, there should be more flags that lead the alliance forward. Duque gently spread his hands and made a pleased gesture. I think that the divine weapon obtained after defeating a powerful evil existence is a very good flag. This was not only a reward, but also an obligation of the ruler of a country or a clan. Therefore, I hope that, on the premise that it's suitable, every leader of the alliance will get a divine artifact first. Duque's words were very reasonable. As long as it was suitable, Boss could take it first. This was the best choice to balance power and combat strength. Perhaps we dwarves are violent. The 2 great clans don't even have a single healer class hero. This was fate. Kalia, take it. We dwarves aren't stingy. Magni was rather magnanimous and was the first to give his blessing. Take it, King Menethil. I'm sure the people of Lordaeron would be happy. The next to speak was Daneth Trollbane. This low-profile king directly gave his sincere blessings to Kalia. Even the more neutral leader had expressed his stance. Kalia's good sisters naturally rushed forward to give their compliments and blessings. I thank everyone. I will work harder to heal everyone's injuries. Kalia slowly walked forward and took the hammer that was glowing green from the smiling guardian of life, Freya. She gently stroked it, a gentle expression on her face. At this moment, the female giant suddenly spoke. Since it's a divine weapon of the nature series, I just added something to it. Freya waved her hand, and everyone saw that there was an additional rope that looked like a ribbon around the handle of the hammer. This is... Kalia was a little confused. Freya smiled. My blessing of life. It can protect you. It will automatically activate when you are in danger, and use powerful life energy to grant you a full recovery from a near-death state. Remember, once you use it, it must be recharged for at least 30 days, and it's best if it's in a place full of life. Before it's fully recharged, it won't be able to save your life. As soon as she finished speaking, even Duque was pleasantly surprised. No one knew better than him that the original, Valinor, definitely didn't have this special effect. At this moment, Tarim spoke. This time, in order to express our gratitude for the help of the Alliance and for the efforts of you mortals, we have discussed and decided to send troops to join your alliance. Really? Is that okay? Duque and the others were quite stunned. Duque looked up and asked, Don't you have to protect Odor anymore? Tarim shook his head. The greatest purpose of Odor's existence is to seal the ancient god Yogg-Saron, ensure the evolution of life, and conduct experiments for Mimiron. Now that the core of Yogg-Saron has been destroyed, our greatest responsibility has automatically disappeared. Hodier continued, We've talked to Orgaron. If we can slightly reduce the pollution of this world, the Titans will probably be happier when they come in the future and raise their evaluation of us. As a laboratory left behind by the Titans, Odor needs to be guarded, Mimiron said. After the 4 Guardians and Alkavan's 4 Guardians looked at each other for a while, Tarim announced, We will send Freya and Mimiron to assist you until peace is restored in Northrend. Alkavan and the other 3 will further participate in the Alliance's battle. Until they determine that the safety index of this world meets the standards they deem acceptable. The gentleman Du Mook had been thinking about abducting Mimiron from the beginning. It was one thing to think about it, but another to do it. He had evil intentions, but before he could put them into action, they came knocking on his door. Was there anything more pleasurable than this? Ah. It's great that the Guardians are willing to enter the world to help. Magni was the first to agree. This guy had been flirting with Alcavan for a long time. Duque naturally welcomed them with both hands and feet. Thank you so much. I hope to see more Guardians active in the decisive battle against the Burning Legion in the future. Duque, who was familiar with the direction of history, would definitely climb up along the pole. No matter what the future would be, it was good to make a statement first and bury a prelude. After all, at the time of return of the army, Azeroth would be invaded from all directions. Almost every Alliance and Horde territory would face the surprise attack of at least 10,000 demons. Although the Alliance had a lot of heroes now, it was hard enough to defend the major cities, and it was not enough to spread them across the vast territory. Chapter 1656. As for the 4 Guardians of Alcafon's treasury, Duque was overjoyed. As a lower-level Guardian, the 4 giants were not very strong. However, with their size and HP, if used in the right place, they would be able to hold their own against 10,000 enemies. Coupled with their already good elemental attacks, they were not inferior to most of the Burning Legion's mid-tier Void Lords. Only the top-tier Void Lords could suppress them. The Guardians had their own principles. Since they promised to help, they would definitely help to the end. Nothing was more reassuring than this. There was still a lot of work to be done, such as dealing with Yogg-Saron's body and bringing Orgaren to Karazhan as a guest. These were all trivial matters. The real important matter was that the Horde actually proposed to send more troops to help attack Icecrown Fortress. Duque, who was resting in Naxxramas, received the Horde's emissary together with Magni, who had returned to the Western Front. This is the will of the Great Chief? Duque was quite surprised to see Wujin personally visit. The Great Chief means the will of the entire Horde. Arthas, who killed his father, betrayed the kingdom, betrayed the entire alliance, and even blasphemed against all living beings in the world, must be destroyed. The Horde is very willing to contribute to the peace of Azeroth. Wujin placed one hand on his chest and saluted to Duque and Magni. Duque and the Dwarf King looked at each other, a little confused about what Thrall meant. Because this did not seem like Thrall's style. Thrall was undoubtedly a wise and courageous leader. To be able to take advantage of the internal strife of the Alliance and decisively lead the escaped Orc slaves to West Kalimdor, out of the Alliance's sphere of influence, this proved his courage. A leader could have many think tanks and perhaps each of them could provide good ideas, but the real decision-maker was still the leader. Thrall's move now looked very bad. If he had made up his mind to please the Alliance from the beginning, then he should have sent the main force or at least the elites. Instead of having young Salyafar bring the Blackrock clan over to work, or having Braindead Howl and Warsong come over to herd sheep and occupy territory to cause trouble. If they started to be passive and waited for the Alliance to subjugate Yogg-Saron and obtain a divine artifact before coming over to reinforce them, no matter how they looked at it, it would seem like they were licking their boots. It was one thing to kneel down and lick his boots, but doing so was simply a thankless task. Of course, the higher-ups of the Alliance wouldn't object, but what would the soldiers think? Now on the Western Front, Aljo-Nerub had been defeated by Muradin's army. Now that Kalegos had taken care of the magic pivot, the Western Frontline army had left behind enough reserves to prevent the Icecrown Glacier from having a secret passage to attack the Northwind Tundra. With the help of the Red Dragon army, the majority of the army had already begun to pass through the Dragonbone Waste and was about to enter the Crystal Song Forest. The vanguard had even deployed troops to the southwest of the Icecrown Glacier. On the eastern front, the Undead Trolls Zudak area was basically wiped out. William left Brawl Bearskin to lead a division to carry out the final sweep. Then he brought little Salyafar and his Orc army, who had shown brilliantly in Zudak, to the Crystal Song Forest to meet up with the troops on the western front. When Oder had also returned to order, and Mimiron was about to lead the mechanized army to cooperate with the Alliance to attack the Icecrown Glacier area, wasn't it a joke for the Horde to join in? What did they want the Horde for? To snatch the rewards and equipment? Even the good Theon frowned a little, not to mention Magni, who was a little hot-tempered. Duque gently raised his hand and made a gesture to calm everyone down. He then pointed to the 3D projection of the battlefield. Are you clear about the situation of the Alliance, Dragon Slumber Shrine, and Oder's allied forces, Woken? Clear. Woken was neither servile nor overbearing. The Alliance needs an acceptable explanation, Duque said. The participation of the Horde's main force can reduce the Alliance's losses, Woken insisted. Duque shook his head. These days it's long past the era where numbers can easily win. I don't want the Scourge to fight more and more, and the more they fight, the stronger they become. When Duque said this, Woken's internal energy was actually a little discouraged, but he had his own special point of view. Our horde noticed that among the new batch of professionals in the Alliance, the proportion of warriors is rapidly decreasing. And this is what the horde is good at. No matter how strong the Alliance's technology is, it still can't surpass the level of the Burning Legion. In order to cope with the battle between Azeroth and the Burning Legion that will eventually come, the Alliance needs warriors of the horde. Woken took a step forward, waving his hands, his face full of excitement. The warriors of the horde are definitely a necessary supplement for the Alliance. And this time, as long as the Alliance provides enough logistical supplies for the horde warriors of the Northern Expedition, we can get 200,000 elite horde warriors as the vanguard. After Woken finished speaking, he didn't say anything else. Just like that, he hung his long troll hands, waiting for Duque and Magni's reply. Magni glanced at Duque. Duke knew what Magni was trying to say just from the look of disgust in his eyes. But Duque was considering it. There was no doubt that the so-called 200,000 warriors were *T. Duque didn't even need to think to know that this was actually Sal's clever way of diverting the conflict. As long as the Alliance agreed, the poor horde with a large population could instantly get rid of the food burden of 200,000 big eaters. And Sal was betting that the Alliance wouldn't be so ruthless as to directly send these horde soldiers to their deaths. On the other hand, these soldiers were also pathfinding stones, used to test the attitude of the Alliance to see if the Alliance could really accept the horde. If the Alliance's attitude was tough and refused to accept, then the horde might have other ideas. Duque couldn't help but smile bitterly. Sure enough, the situation would change a person. Now even Sal had begun to play such tricks. Come to think of it, this was also a situation that Duque had single-handedly directed. If the horde occupied a vast territory like in history, the original situation of vast land and sparse population would indeed usher in a period of rapid development after the addition of the 2 million orcs from Nagrand. Now half of Kalimdor had become the territory of the Alliance in a practical sense, and it was the most fertile land. The horde had nowhere to expand, and they didn't dare to start a war against the Alliance. They could only struggle to survive between the Alliance and the various foreign enemies. This feeling was so bad that if Duque was in the position of the great chief of the horde, Duque would also go crazy. Since Sal had thrown away his cards, Duque didn't mind eating them all. Duque smiled. The old horde and the Alliance had all kinds of unpleasant experiences in the past, but in the past 10 years, the horde has been the most loyal ally of the Alliance. The Alliance cherishes the trust and friendship of the horde. How about this? These 200,000 horde warriors, the Northern Expedition Army will accept them, and I will take a little from the military provisions and transport 500,000 tons of food to Kalimdor for the horde. Chapter 1657. Wujina was quite surprised. He had prepared all kinds of measures and backup plans, but with Duque's generous announcement to support the horde, they became useless. Even though he tried his best to hide the changes in his mood, his surprised look still fell into the eyes of many Alliance leaders. Thank you for the generosity of the Alliance. Wujin bowed deeply. After Wujin left, Magni said in a deep voice, Is it worth it? I'm not asking for the general direction, but whether we are treating those green-skinned people too well. The dwarves had a long life, and the war with the horde in Ironforge was like yesterday. The 3 Bronzebeard brothers lost their father in that battle. Duque glanced around. There were no outsiders here, only a few dwarves, the gnome leader, Donas, Jaina and Kalia. Duque smiled. Do you think I'm a dove or a hawk? I used to think that you were a true hawk, but now you're more like a dove, Magni said honestly. I think I should be considered a king. Duke's reply caused everyone to roll their eyes. You've already said what you wanted to say. Thrall is a dove. Duque suddenly said heavily, although he will not hesitate to start a war when the horde is in danger, in his heart, using force is the last and most inferior option. Under his leadership, the horde has indeed absorbed various races to strengthen itself like the Alliance. However, the horde lacks a core program, and the orcs do not have a well-deserved king status to lead the races. When there is a lack of survival resources and conflict breaks out, how will Thrall deal with it? After going through many wars, no fool would be able to become the leader of a country or a race. Everyone understood at once, Thrall could not handle it at all. Everyone knew that after Arthas killed his father and the Lordaeron continent survived the chaos, the Alliance actually had little need for the horde. Later, if it were not for the worry that Illidan would turn all the orcs in the Outland into fell orcs and attack Azeroth, there would be no burning crusade. At this point, if it were not for Arthas, the enemy of the living, and Yogg-Saron, the troublemaking ancient god, the Alliance might have already started a war with the Horde. Duque's current approach definitely contained the intention of stabilizing the Horde. Duque sighed softly and said 3 sentences in a row. The Alliance may consider the relationship with the Horde, but not now. The Alliance may start a war with the Horde. Now or in the next few years it is not the time. After Thrall introduced the Beastmen of Draenor into Kalimdor, the seeds of internal strife in the tribe were already planted. The traditional Beastmen will demand more, and King Gallen will also bring trouble to the tribe. When all the contradictions accumulate and Thrall is unable to resolve them, with Thrall's character, he will abdicate. At that time the Hawks of the tribe will come to power. If the Duque had to of the past, then Thrall and Duke of Duafid I the of King of Tuavov. Originally, the leaders of the Alliance had begun to feel that the existence of the Horde was of little value. If they wanted to deal with them, there would be endless problems that kept the Alliance busy. They were even more worried that they would force the Horde to be on the side of the Burning Legion again. If they wanted to coexist peacefully, the hatred of the past made the entire Alliance maintain a high degree of vigilance against the Horde. If they wanted to pull the entire Horde into the Alliance through conciliatory means and use some sugar-coated bullets, the orcs would definitely be the first to take the lead and eat the sugar coating. After all, every race in the Horde had a very strong sense of self. No matter which one they chose, the Alliance would not be able to please them. Sometimes, when facing a strong enemy, they had to pull in the powerhouses of the Horde to help. This kind of contradictory and ambiguous relationship between being on guard against each other and often fighting side by side made the Alliance incomparably tangled from top to bottom. Now that Duque had poked through this veil and set a tone for the higher-ups of the Alliance, everyone had a unified idea in the future. Large-scale wars were rarely decided in one battle. The so-called decisive battle was formed after many battles of various sizes. Only then would there be a saying that the victory or defeat would be decided in one battle. After the elites of the Alliance killed Yogg-Saron, the Alliance's offensive against the Calamity Army came to a halt. The battles everywhere were at most stabilizing the front lines and consolidating the results of the battles. This was because the coldest winter had arrived. Winter in Northrend was a nightmare for both outsiders and native creatures. Gales of magnitude 10 or above could easily reach 1 meter, or even 2 meters of snow a night. This was an extravagant hope for any army to advance. With such deep snow, not to mention the Alliance's soldiers and mechanized troops, even the idiotic undead soldiers would find it difficult to attack without the support of a high-tier lich. Generally speaking, a lich would need to use ice to seal the ground or the crypt spider demons to dig holes in the ground. Unfortunately, these methods were all broken by the Alliance. Digging holes was easy to detect and a simple seismograph could do it. Ambushes in the snow were a bit difficult. In the previous few medium-scale battles, the Alliance's medium-sized camps were ambushed. In the worst case, the entire army was wiped out. More than 1,000 people died in battle and were all dragged away by the undead. Later on, Duque developed a land reconnaissance device that was based on the principle of sonar and used arcane energy waves as a substitute. This thing was as big as a light tank and only a Morningstar mage could operate it. But the effect was good. After a wave passed through, regardless of whether one was hiding in the snow or not, as long as it was a physical existence, its appearance would immediately be outlined on the magic mirror. If it was a humanoid existence, it would be a human-shaped ditch. Therefore, this device, known as the Human Outline External Device, was shortened to the Human Outline Device in the Alliance. In the winter, the Alliance could not casually send elite teams to Ice Crown Fortress for a surprise attack. According to everyone's estimates, if the strength of the Calamity Army was not weakened, Arthas, who had the largest number of souls as fuel, would at least double the power of his Frostmourn's fury. First, they would use the army to weaken the strength of the Calamity Army, purify the souls of most of the Scourge soldiers, and then fight Arthas. This was the safest method. For the entire winter of the 25th year of the Dark Portal, the Alliance, the Horde, the Dragon Slumber Shrine, and the Otter family formed the Northern Expedition Coalition Army. In the Horde, the warriors who could fight the best enjoyed the best treatment and ate the most. 200,000 Horde warriors who did nothing but eat all day long started to cause trouble when they had nothing better to do. Looking at the report sent to him, Duque revealed a mysterious smile. They're very idle, aren't they? Then give them something to do. Chapter 1658. The traditional life of the orcs was to hunt or fight all year round, except for winter. When there was nowhere to go during the winter, they would use the food they had accumulated to survive the winter. They would have sex or hold gladiatorial competitions in the clan's big tents. Sal had no choice but to throw the Nagrand orcs, who were the most troublemakers and had the least food reserves, to the north. This was also a helpless move. If these guys were not sent over, they would do things according to the traditional rules: steal or rob. If there were foreigners robbing foreigners, if there were no foreigners, they would attack their own people. Anyway, in the eyes of these uncivilized orcs, only their own clan was their own people. Most of them did not have the concept of big orcs. It had to be said that throwing the burden to the alliance showed the tribe's sincerity. If they could take advantage of the war to get rid of some of the troublemakers, it would be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Of course, the alliance would not be so stupid as to raise 200,000 orcs and let them eat and drink for free. Duque used the method of divide and conquer. The small clans with no status in the tribe were directly given holy light enchanted weapons. Every 100 people were assigned an alliance paladin, who took them to various places to take over the cleanup work of the alliance soldiers. The Scourge army had been operating in Northrend for 20 years and could be said to have dug holes everywhere. Any corpse without a guardian was turned into an undead. Especially the 2 places, Zudak and Ajo Nirub. The Zudak area was full of altars. That kind of complex and narrow underground labyrinth could not transport heavy equipment at all. It was very likely that dozens of corpses were squeezed in an inconspicuous crack, and they would come out to cause trouble. The Spider Kingdom was even more troublesome. In the past, when the big spiders fought against the Scourge army, they would dig holes and escape if they could not fight. As a result, it was all a messy maze of small tunnels, and they could only rely on infantry. These could only be filled with human lives, or they had to use elites. After fighting for so many months, the alliance soldiers were generally tired. Duque was even more reluctant to let the dwarves, who were originally good at tunnel warfare, be used as soldiers. This kind of close combat was the best place for the orcs to display their combat power. Of course, there were also large tribes that were more arrogant among the orcs, such as the Mocking Skull. They refused to enter the small pits to play games with Bonehead, and were only willing to participate in open battles. For such a person, Duque waved his hand and showed great respect for history. He created the Silver Arena, on the high ground between the Storm Cliff and the Ice Crown Glacier. This huge arena group was divided into the Candidate Arena, the Silver Warrior Arena, and the Championship Arena. There were so many arenas for the beastmen who boasted of their bravery to vent their excess energy. Duque was very considerate. He divided the arena's usage time into the beastmen's time, the alliance's time, and the time where they could interact with each other. This allowed these fellows with excess energy to fight against each other, as well as unite against external threats, and bring glory to their race. Since it was an arena, there should be an audience, right? Without an audience, there would be no atmosphere. If you want to enter, you have to pay a ticket, right? Would you like some drinks and popcorn? It didn't matter if the beastmen didn't have money. The alliance would pay the beastmen soldiers according to the standards of the alliance soldiers. Of course, there were no other benefits. The beastmen could take Arathar's coins to the canteen to buy extra food, and even save up to buy better equipment for themselves. It didn't matter if the Horde warriors didn't know how to make money other than fighting. They could bet on it. Well, the Alliance's largest official gambling dealer was the Marcus family. It didn't matter if they lost everything. The beastmen could still work, such as sparring with the Alliance soldiers. They could treat it as training the Alliance recruits. There were also slightly dangerous jobs, such as cooperating with Mimiron to test the combat power of the mechanical gnomes. Anyway, these beastmen had unknowingly become accustomed to the Alliance's economic system. Duque's approach was so dignified, so fair, and so open that Varrock Salyafar, as the commander of the 200,000 beastmen, could not find any fault with it. Although he remembered Sal and Wajine's instructions to always keep an eye on Duque, he still sighed. Time passed, and it was New Year's Day, January 1st, year 26. The beastmen had no concept of the new year, but the Alliance was different. A large group of soldiers who had crossed the ocean and had no choice but to spend the new year on another continent began to celebrate. In order to alleviate the soldiers' homesickness, Duque was kind enough to fully open the weave on this day. Hundreds of military camps of all sizes and no scent were set up with magic communication devices, allowing the soldiers who had made outstanding contributions in the northern expedition to make a 5-minute long-distance video call with their families. This move directly raised Duque's already high reputation to a whole new level. No matter which camp they went to, they could hear soldiers shouting, "Long live Duke Marcus." The Alliance's civilization and cultural input was imperceptibly influencing these beastmen who came from the wild world. After New Year's Day, the arena opened again. After a long time of preparation, the main event was finally in Cairo, which was commonly known as the Crusades Trial. Ever since the arena was built, the most powerful hunters of the Alliance and Horde did not fear the bitter cold. They captured some powerful beasts from all over No Scent and threw them into the arena for the warriors of the Alliance and Horde to challenge. Injuries were inevitable during the challenge, but deaths were rare. A group of priests of the Alliance were on standby at the side of the arena. As long as they didn't die on the spot, they would be able to pull their lives back. It was just that the most powerful beasts were left until now. Without Duke's permission, even if he had 10,000 guts, he wouldn't dare to let a monster of this level act recklessly. On this day, Duke, Jaina, Salyafar, and Gurus Hellscream were the leaders sitting in the special seats next to the Arena of Champions. They were Duke, Jaina, Salyafar, and Gurus Hellscream, who looked like everyone owed him tens of thousands of dollars. "Oh, Duke, does he have a grudge against you?" Jaina teased Duque through a magic message. "A grudge? Is he worthy?" Duque chuckled. "But he will be a very good chess piece. He's simple, irritable, and violent. Any chess player would like such a chess piece, even if it's the opponent's." Jaina's eyes twinkled, but she didn't say anything. On the other side, Gurus was even more annoyed. "Duke Marcus?" Gurus was originally going to call Duque that, but Varrock Salyafar snorted. "You have to add the word, sir, to show respect." Gurus was about to explode from anger. What was hateful was that he was only the chief of the Warsong clan, while Varrock represented Thrall here. He gritted his teeth indignantly, and even his fangs made cracking sounds before he squeezed out the word "Your Excellency" from between his teeth. "Oh, what's the matter?" Duque acted as if he had just heard him. "Is there anything the Alliance can't say in front of the Horde warriors?" Chapter 1659. Something you can't say? Of course it's a little. Jaina replied directly. However, amidst her enchanting smile, her narrowed eyes were filled with mockery. "Do I have to tell you what I'm whispering to my lover?" With that, Jaina placed her hand, which was covered in a white glove, on the back of Duque's hand. She was clearly saying, "I'm showing off my love. Do you want some dog food?" Garush knew that he had been impulsive, but he did not regret it. His instincts as a warrior told him that the two were mocking him. He had always believed in his instincts. However, his actions were rather childish when it came to diplomacy. No, this could no longer be called diplomacy. This was a complete venting of anger. In the Northwind Tundra, the Warsong clan had suffered heavy losses from the betrayal of the Blue Dragon King Malygos. Garush's performance as chief was mediocre. In the end, it was the former chief, Grom, who had already died, who came out to save the day. Garush could clearly feel that his subordinates' trust and evaluation of him had greatly decreased. The Warsong Beastman talked more about his father than him. Ever since that day, his temper had been like a powder keg, in a state where he would explode at the slightest provocation. Seeing him like this, Varrock felt a headache coming on. He stood up with a swoosh. "Garush, don't be unreasonable. Sit down." "You." Garush's neck was red. The bulging arteries and veins in his neck looked as if 2 sausages had been stuffed into them. "This is the Northern Expedition Army, and this is the Supreme Commander of the Alliance. This is not your Warsong clan's hunting ground. If you continue to be rude, get the hell back to Orgrimmar." Varrock scolded sternly. In terms of status, Varrock Salyafar was the current chief of the Blackrock clan, on equal footing with Garush. In terms of status, as the supreme commander of the Great Chief, Salyafar had the authority to directly lead the entire Beastman army. During the tribal wars, even chiefs like Wajin and Kane had to listen to his commands. Garush, who was still inexperienced and had not even fully grasped the Warsong clan, did not have the confidence to challenge Varrock. "Umph." After letting out a disdainful snort, Garush finally crossed his arms and sat down forcefully. Little did they know that in psychology, crossing one's arms in front of one's chest was actually a defensive posture that prevented one from communicating with the other party. Varrock said apologetically, "Sorry, Garush is a brat from Nagrand. Young and impulsive, Sir Marcus, please do not blame him." No, it's fine." Duque smiled and waved his hand. Of course, in his heart, Duque was laughing his head off. There would always be people with bad brains in this world. Should I say Brainless Roar is indeed Brainless Roar? How ignorant and fearless. Who gave you the courage to use such a trivial reason to challenge a demigod? If the great chief of the tribe was an idiot, then Duque would not hesitate to take care of the tribe first. Since he was familiar with the course of history, Duque did not mind watching Garush go further and further down the road of seeking death. It was as interesting as watching a clown jumping around. On the other side, Jaina clapped her hands and a gnome wizard ran to the podium. "Hello. Honorable Alliance Commander Marcus. Hello. Respected Sir Seraphar. I am today's host, Millhouse Mana Storm." The dwarf who spoke had a head of silvery white hair and a beard, as well as two rather eye-catching handlebar mustaches. He wore a blue wizard robe with golden edges and a pair of bright red trousers. He looked quite comical. What surprised Duque the most was his name. As a transmigrator, Duque would certainly not forget this incomparably famous and amusing gnome wizard. Gnomes were a highly intelligent race and at the same time, they had a strong desire for knowledge. If there was a chance to use technology that they could not achieve to satisfy their thirst for knowledge, many people would do so. Of course, Millhouse did the same. In the original history, his first appearance was during the Burning Crusade. This guy intended to steal the Naru's spaceship and use the Naru's technology to explore the outside world. He stealthily boarded the ship of his dreams. But unfortunately, Kale, that's Blood Elf troops captured the Naru's spaceship. Then, to protect himself, Millhouse hid in the second cell. As a result, when the players were beating the boss of the anti-magic prison, this guy came out to help beat the boss. In history, Millhouse was a very famous person who caused a lot of trouble. In addition, he was the only wizard who survived after the teleportation failed and was lost in space. Duque just did not know why this amusing pharaoh would come here. He also did not know that this amusing pharaoh was already at the peak of the Radiant Moon realm and showed faint signs of breaking through to the Breaking Dawn realm. It was not that Duque was boasting, but as long as he personally helped Millhouse adjust the magic circuit, the Alliance would immediately have a third Breaking Dawn Great Wizard. It was just that this was quite unnecessary. First of all, it would affect Millhouse's growth. Secondly, once this guy entered the Breaking Dawn, they would have to find a position for him in the Dalajan, or at least one of the 6 members of the Kirin Tor Council. Then the question was, what would be the consequences of letting an amusing fool be a leader? The answer was, amusing was contagious. It would definitely be a nightmare to raise this crazy and curious gnome mage to the top. Duque would not be able to do anything and would be responsible for cleaning up Millhouse's mess all day long. Seeing Millhouse, Duque did not have time to say anything. Brainless Roar jumped out again. "What is this? A lowly dwarf? Is there no normal people in the Alliance? Why should I listen to a lowly guy who can't even reach my knees?" Brainless Roar's temper could be said to be unreasonable. He had a bad temper and Millhouse was not easy to deal with. This irascible dwarf stood up with his hands on his hips, and the frost magic circuit worked rapidly. Almost instantly, an ice platform formed under his feet, lifting him to the same level as Gurus. Millhouse spat on Brainless Roar on the spot. "Lowly? Buddy, I don't care who you are. No one dares to say that the mighty Millhouse is a lowly dwarf. Let me tell you, this is racial discrimination. My height difference with yours is at least 5 feet. Okay, maybe 6 feet. But so what? Do you believe that I can burn off your ugly legs with a fireball and reduce the height difference between you and me?" At this moment, before everyone could react, another dwarf jumped out. "I don't know what happened here, but I will be happy to deal with this unreasonable fool with Millhouse." "What did you say?" Brainless Roar clenched his fists and stood up. At this moment, Duque's leisurely voice was heard. "Grom, control your son." Chapter 1660. As soon as Duque's voice fell, a tall, burly, green-skinned figure suddenly traversed through the void and appeared from a portal that had suddenly opened. Elder and younger Salyafar, the tribal guards behind them, as well as the Warsong Beastmen deputies behind Garrush, all had rather interesting expressions on their faces. Younger Salyafar's face was red as if he was constipated. He wanted to laugh but was too embarrassed to do so. This made Garrush even more embarrassed and angry. Mortals always yearned for an existence that transcended the mortal world, because such an existence could do many things that they couldn't. Mortals didn't like having a high and mighty existence binding them, because that would make them feel like slaves. Unfortunately, Azeroth was a magical world. Even before the opening of the Dark Portal, it had already been a place where gods frequently showed their divinity. As early as the end of the first battle at the Dark Portal, the appearance of the first Death Knight meant that the line between life and death had become blurred. The tribe could still accept Death Knights and the Forsaken joining the tribe, so the appearance of Grom Hellscream, who was a heroic spirit, was actually not strange at all. However, The existence that he hated the most had summoned his most helpless father to teach him a lesson. There was no need to mention how aggrieved Garrush felt. At this moment, if he could, Garrush would definitely want to kill Duque and let Duque fall completely or something. He couldn't do it. This was the so-called despair. Elder Howl raised his world-famous blood howl and smashed it at his son in a deep voice. Garrush, go to the arena. Let me see how much you've grown after I died. Have you become a great warrior? And a chief who can truly lead the tribe? Garrush was really in a state of shock. His neck, his cheeks, and his forehead were all protruding veins. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he didn't even have a chance to object. In the tradition of the Beastmen, there was no need for a reason for the son to challenge the father, or for the father to teach the son a lesson. Since when could the son not listen to the father? Well, as long as you beat the father, that's enough. A battle between blood relatives was never a one-off deal. It could be repeated at any time. In any case, whoever won would have the final say. Before you become the victor, all the injustice and grievances you have, hold it in. Whatever orders the victors give you, you must obey them. Otherwise you can die. If he really died, he would be spurned by all the other beastmen. That's right, having a bigger fist was the hard truth. The barbaric traditional orcs believed in this to their very bones. Garrush had once defeated Grom, but he was like a candle in the wind, a Grom who had lost an arm and was about to die of old age. Thus, even if he took over the position of chief of the Warsong tribe from Grom, he would still be questioned. Being scolded as a tiger father and a dog son was the tragedy of almost all the second-generation heroes. No one would call you by your name. Instead, they would call you the son of so-and-so. They wouldn't even want to remember your name. Oh, you're the son of Grom Hellscream? This was the Horde version. Oh, you're Roar. This was the Alliance's version. Everyone would only remember how awesome and powerful Grom was. Before Garrush surpassed his father, this situation would not change at all. Even if Garrush surpassed Roar, as long as it wasn't by a huge margin, he would only be judged as dragons beget dragons and phoenixes beget phoenixes. But was it so easy to surpass Roar's achievements? In this life, Roar killed an adult Goron by himself at the age of 14, making his name known throughout the Warsong tribe. When he was in his 20s, he participated in the war against the Draenei and was the vanguard in the attack on Shotrath City. After that, he participated in the first and second battle of the Dark Portal, suppressing Big Sister Windrunner and Second Sister Windrunner. At that time, he was the strongest in the Alliance, Anduin Lothar and other top experts in the Alliance. After that, when he was a slave in the Blackrock tribe and Thrall's prison camp, he led the Warsong tribe to fight against the humans in the forests and mountains of Lordaeron, never yielding. When Thrall escaped from Goldenhold Castle, he fought side by side with Thrall and Orgrim against the Lich King Arthas. Not long after, the orcs went west to Kalimdor, and Roar killed the Burning Legion's high-tier Void Lord Manaroth in Grey Valley. In the Battle of Mount Hyjal, they worked together to kill many Void Lords and were the main force in killing Archimonde. After that, it was the crusade against the Flame Demon King Ragnaros, the Black Dragon Prince Nefarian, and the ancient god Sethun. Roar had fought for his entire life, and every battle was filled with a strong sense of legend. He had never lost, and at most it was a draw. Such a great achievement, no matter how one looked at it, was 9 streets ahead of the young Garrush. At this moment, Garrush's round eyes were clearly saying things like, "Wouldn't it be better if you just died like this? Why did you become a human slave? Why did you come back to appear in front of me?" These eyes were very easy to understand. At the same time, there was also the hatred and anger towards Duque reflected in his eyes. Everything, fueled by the shame of his own strength and the faint fear of his father, was rising higher and higher. Although it was not to the extent of being uncontrollable, it seemed like it was only a matter of time before he lost control. "Let's go." Roar turned around and walked outside. Garrush followed like a zombie. On the other side, the young Seraphar and the 2 dwarf wizards were silent. Admittedly, if it had just been opened, it would definitely have been a blow to the slightly fragile relationship between the Alliance and the Horde. If someone with ulterior motives instigated or spread the news, it would undoubtedly destroy the relationship between the Alliance and the Horde. Only Garrush would suffer. Was it really okay to do this? In this regard, King Seraphar's reaction was silence. Because among the younger generation of the Horde, Thrall valued his son Dranos the most. Both young Seraphar and Garrush were excellent warriors. Although they both had the rashness of young orcs, young Seraphar had a better view of the overall situation. Young Seraphar would definitely take over as the chief of the Blackrock tribe in the future. But which father did not want his son to be more successful? As an old acquaintance of Grom, King Seraphar of course knew how terrifying Roar was at his peak. The title of the Horde's #1 warrior was not just for show. The scene of him teaching his son a lesson could not be any more beautiful. Even though he could vaguely feel that Duque was targeting Garush, King Seraphar still made such a choice. After Duque suppressed the two dwarves' violent emotions, King Seraphar said, "Then, can we start today's competition?" Milhouse bowed slowly. Sorry I was too impulsive just now. Now, please allow me to introduce today's competition, the champion teams from the Alliance and the Horde. Chapter 1661. Fighting. This would always be the main theme of the creatures. No world had unlimited resources. One day they would find that there would never be too many places for them to live and reproduce. Limited resources and limitless reproduction requirements. This led to the inevitability of conflict. Why was the champion revered by everyone? It was because the victory of the champion was built on countless losers. Only by defeating the most and the strongest enemies could one bring the greatest sense of accomplishment. In front of Duque, King Seraphar, and the others were the two champion teams from the Alliance and the Horde. Milhouse's slightly shrill gnome voice sounded again. Come on. Warriors representing the Alliance and the Horde. On both sides of the special seats, two groups of people slowly walked out from the dark tunnel and onto the protruding platform at the side of the arena. Looking at these young and energetic faces, Duque couldn't help but smile. Back when he was still a newbie in Azeroth, he wasn't as good at fighting as these little guys. Duque suddenly noticed that both sides had 12 people. The Alliance had no Death Knights or Shamans, and the Horde had no Paladins. Duque was a little surprised, but then he felt relieved. Sure enough, this butterfly of his had stirred up the general trend of the world. Rothelma Theron was still at the level of a lackey, helping the lively Queen Sylvie. The Blood Elves didn't join the Horde, so naturally the Horde didn't have any Paladins. On the Alliance's side, even the Forgotten Ones were still a taboo, let alone the Immortals. Of course, they weren't so open-minded as to allow Death Knights to become official professionals. Similarly, for some reason, the Draenei didn't seem to have started their shamanic path. It felt a little messy. Duque didn't mind this. In Milhouse's introduction, Duque heard some unfamiliar names: Kavina Woodsong, Asilia Moonwalker, Ansa Forgemaster. Duque didn't have any impression of these little guys who were praised by Milhouse as the leaders of the new generation of the Alliance. After all, back in the game, Duque had beaten up the Horde warriors. Duque smiled. Heroes were created by the times. When the Dark Portal had just opened, it felt like anyone he met was a great person of the future. That era is gone forever. These little fellows might not be able to reach Jaina's level. However, every large organization was not simply composed of the strongest. The pyramid was the best representation of the ratio between the strong and the weak. Perhaps the ultimate victor would be decided by top-notch martial strength, but the true pillars of a large organization were the core members like the ones in front of them. Just as Milhouse finished his introduction, Duque stood up. He could clearly feel the excitement of this group of Alliance warriors. He cleared his throat, and his voice, which was clean and full of wisdom, was amplified by magic and spread to the entire audience. A true warrior must not only have the courage to face the most bleak and desperate situations, but he also needs a peaceful heart. In the future, perhaps some of you will become heroes of the Alliance. Perhaps some of you will die in battle. However, most of you will become the core members of the Alliance through your occupation. If the heroes in your eyes are the sharpness and shield of the Alliance, then the core members are the backbone of the Alliance. Only the backbone is the core that allows the Alliance to stand tall. I have high hopes for you and I wish you all the best. I hope you can trust your comrades and completely integrate into the big family of the Alliance. Go. For the future of the Alliance, for the future of yourself and your friends, fight for it. Compared to Duque's calm speech, King Seraphar's speech was much more passionate. He personally walked over to the tribal warriors and encouraged them face to face. Unfortunately, his speech was still so old-fashioned. It was nothing more than the honor of the tribe, the traditions of the orcs, blah 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 and so on. Jaina came over and put her hand on the back of Duque's hand. She smiled and whispered, "Is it really okay to speak so unexciting?" Duque glanced at the tribal warriors who seemed to be on steroids and kept shouting. He snickered. If this was a one-on-one duel, I would undoubtedly lose by doing this. The second half of Duque's sentence was naturally that it was most appropriate for him to do so. Jaina was so smart that she understood on the spot. This Queen Kurtiras, who had always been a strong woman, showed a rare expression of a little girl. You're the most cunning. Sure enough, the following battle confirmed Duque's prediction. The tribal warriors on steroids were too fierce, so fierce that they forgot themselves and even easily gave up on the camp. Most of them just barely completed their own duties and focused more on attacking. It seemed that this was the so-called fierce as a tiger, but not a single enemy was killed. Almost all the Alliance warriors were injured from the start, but the Alliance quickly stabilized their position. The Alliance's battle strategy could be described in one sentence. Focus fire on the shaman, desperately control the tree-shaped druid, constantly interrupt the priest healing, and dispel all the tribe's continuous recovery and control skills. There were only 12 people, but the Alliance warriors fought like an army of 1,000. This scene moved King Seraphar on the spot. His mouth moved for a moment before he squeezed out a few words. We're going to lose. Lose? No way. Young Seraphar was also a guy with the word brave carved on his chest, so he couldn't tell for a moment. Watch carefully and learn well. The gap between us and the Alliance is already comprehensive. Although surprised, young Seraphar still followed his father's words and opened his eyes wide, trying to imprint this scene into his mind. Sure enough, after a few rounds, the tribe's recovery shaman was the first to fall under the concentrated firepower. The shaman's weakness of lacking life-saving skills was exposed at this moment. Then, as if there was a chain of explosions, under the rapid transfer of firepower and concentrated attacks of the Alliance warriors, the tribe's healers fell one by one. Like dominoes falling, the 12-man team of the tribe was wiped out in the next 10 seconds, all of them beaten to the ground. We won. The Alliance warrior, Sagakal, was the first to raise the weapon in his hand, showing off his victory to Duque, to the Alliance leaders, and to the audience of over 10,000. We won. The 11 Alliance warriors cheered in unison. Long live the Alliance. More than 6,000 Alliance people burst into cheers like a tsunami. On the contrary, the tribe side was silent. As the host of the ceremony, Milhouse immediately announced proudly, "All right. The team of warriors who will accept the Crusade's trial has been decided. They are the Alliance warriors." Chapter 1662. To Duque it didn't matter who was the challenger. If the Alliance and the Horde were in a honeymoon period, Duque wouldn't even mind going easy on the Horde. But now, of course, if they could win, it was because of their abilities. Why didn't Duque give them his blessings? Good job. Reward. As a big shot in the Alliance, Duque casually took out top-grade equipment from his storage space that had never been seen on the market. Duque would only give equipment that was as old as the Molten Core to outstanding newbie professionals. The equipment that Duque casually gave out was at least as good as the Alcafon's treasury. There were only so many people in the Alliance's hero squad, and equipment was quickly worn out. Plus, each boss wouldn't respawn after being killed in one go, so the loot was 10 to 8 times more than in the game. It was easy for the hero squad to get more equipment. After Duque became a demigod, there were many additional benefits. As a former Void Lord and a demigod who had mastered the power of the soul, he could now erase the soul binding on equipment taken off by mortals. This was very simple. Erase the soul imprint on the equipment. As long as it wasn't an artifact with basic or above self-awareness, there was no equipment that could withstand Duque's soul attack after it left its owner. This allowed the Alliance experts to use their equipment much more efficiently. Looking at the treatment of the local tycoons on the Alliance's side, looking at the happy warriors of the Alliance, almost all the tribal professionals were envious and had a pitiful look on their faces. The most painful thing was that when the arena was first built, all the Alliance and Horde soldiers were forced to not leave the arena early, regardless of whether they won or lost. The Alliance warriors were celebrating, and the Horde, which was mainly made up of orcs, felt very aggrieved. At that moment, King Seraphar stood up and jumped into the field from the side of the 5-meter-high stand. He pulled the dizzy orc warrior Nahok Steelbreaker to his feet. "Stand up. All of you stand up. You always claim to be the inheritors of the orc tradition. So what's your attitude toward the victors now?" King Seraphar pointed at the thousands of orc hostages and asked, "Is this the attitude of a victor?" "But they're not orcs," someone in the crowd said weakly. Old Salyafar waved his hand. "What a joke." He pointed at the crowd of twin-headed ogres and said, "Do you see those ogres? Once upon a time, our ancestors were proud of killing an ogre alone, and they were heroes who killed Gorin alone. But today they are in the Horde's army fighting side by side with us orcs like our brothers. Isn't it because we worship the strong? Why can we even accept our former mortal enemies?" King Salyafar turned around and pointed at the Alliance warriors who were looking at the orcs. Since you call yourselves brave orcs, then tell me, did these warriors cheat in the battle just now? The thousands of orcs fell silent. The king suddenly roared like a drum. Orcs? Answer me right now. As if awakened from a dream, the thousands of orcs stood up in unison and answered, no, no. It was another question that seemed to wake the world up. So their victory, was it a glorious victory? The thousands of orcs answered in unison again, yes. Using all the strength in his body, he practically roared out every drop of air in his lungs. At that moment, it was as if he was possessed by Lord Roar. His voice was like thunder. Then all of you should *king applaud and cheer for the winner. Otherwise you're not fit to call yourselves warlike orcs. After being stunned for a full 2 seconds, the orcs burst into cheers that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Yes, the victor should be praised. Well fought. Your battle tactics are amazing. When I go back, I'm going to practice my little bastard's battle tactics. The Alliance audience was stunned for half a second, then followed suit and shouted like a storm. Ah, that's more like it. If you want to fight alongside us, you have to be strong. Amidst the cheers, the orc warriors walked towards the Alliance warriors. Nahok lightly punched the chest armor of the Alliance warrior, Sakagar. Brother, you fought beautifully just now. You're the real main tank that supports the team. Your whirlwind was beautiful too. Sakagar smiled back. Unknowingly, the atmosphere between the Alliance and the Horde began to harmonize. At that moment, Duque stood up and waved his arms. His voice, which contained faint divine power, spread in all directions. I, Duke Marcus, hereby propose that since the Alliance and the Horde will be facing the Lich King's terrifying undead army in the upcoming Battle of Icecrown Glacier, for the future of all the living, the warriors of the Alliance and the Horde should form a team and participate in this crusade together. Varrock, what do you think? Of course, King Salyafar agreed. Great. That's what an ally should do. Duque waved his hand, and dozens of noble purple objects flew towards the Horde warriors under the support of a strange small tornado. This is... The orc warrior Nahok was a little stunned. Duque's voice rang out again. The winner should enjoy cheers, praises, and the best prize. But the one who put in the effort, blood, and sweat should also be praised. This is a slightly lower level prize. Let's take it as the prize for the runner-up. If one wanted to form a team, if half the team's equipment was more than one level lower, it would be impossible to carry them. If the loser was given the same prize as the winner, then the wine of victory would be bitter. Duque's move not only satisfied the winner's heart of glory, but also made it so that the loser would not be left with nothing. The gap was too big to form a team. Even Varrock could not help but clap his hands in praise. Beautiful. Milhouse's shrill voice rang out again. Well then, warriors of the Alliance and the Horde, please enter the arena together and face the greatest terrifying creature from No Scent. Almost at the same time, a roar that seemed to have come from the primordial wilderness resounded throughout the entire arena. Roar. At the same time, the huge iron gate in the south opened, and a huge horse-like creature that had broken free from its shackles charged out. At first glance he looked like an oversized centaur. If one looked carefully, they would find that he was more than 4 stories tall, with ash-black fur and brown skin. There were 2 huge tusks on his cheeks that looked like curved ivory tusks. That's right. He is the dangerous creature from the Arctic, the Mammoth Man, Gamok the Impaler. Chapter 1663. The Mammoth Men were a fierce creature that lived in Northrend. In a sense, they were like the Lords of the Abyss, except that their lower bodies were not as fat. The Mammoth Men were savage by nature. Once they gathered together, they would inevitably kill each other. This was also the main reason why they were not a big threat. As a very challenging gladiator, the Mammoth Men were not bad. Wow, which hunter is strong enough to capture this guy? Duque asked casually. Jaina, who was next to him, giggled. Something was wrong? Hey. Jaina, confess now or you will be punished. Duque threatened. Jaina betrayed her best friend. It's the Windrunner sisters. Duque's face darkened. There were 4 Windrunner sisters, and the 4th, Lilith, did not have the ability to capture a monster like Gamok the Impaler. As the second sister, Queen Sylvia would basically be drowned by the sea of documents that Lord Thema handed over if she did not participate in high-intensity hero battles. With her strong sense of responsibility, she would never abandon her people and run off to hunt. Then the rest, since they were sisters, F***. Duque could not stay calm anymore. He opened the portal angrily and ran off to interrogate them. A few minutes later, just as Jaina was getting impatient and was about to open Karazhan's magician's eye to peep, no, to inspect the situation, Duque, who was completely gloomy, came back. Yo, my invincible man, why do you look like you lost a battle? Ugh, I lost my eloquence. That's right, it was Aurelia and Winrisa who had come out to hunt. When Duque asked them why they did not take care of the baby and instead came out to hunt with their big bellies, the Windrunner sisters argued. Duque, you big liar. You clearly don't want the baby to come out earlier. Look at how many years we've been pregnant. Taking care of the baby? It's so stuffy. What's the meaning of keeping our bodies so ugly for so long? Danger? It's not dangerous at all. It's not like we're going to fight against an elemental lord or an ancient god. A few beasts that aren't even demigods can't stop us sisters. We also have Sister Lilith as our bodyguard. Let me tell you, after you defeat Arthas, hurry up and transfer your magic power over, or else you'll be waiting for 1 corpse and 2 lives. Oh, it should be 2 corpses and 4 lives. After being bombarded by the 2 sisters like a machine gun, a certain Du was defeated. Have you been discovered? Jaina teased Duque. Actually, he had discovered it long ago. It's just that they love me and don't want me to be distracted, so they didn't expose me. That's right, Duque didn't give enough mana to Aurelia and Sasha's child on purpose. This allowed him and the Windrunner sisters' children to grow up peacefully. In fact, if the magic power was abnormally abundant, the child might have already been born and could be used as soy sauce. It was precisely because there were too many uncertain fates that caused Duque to be hesitant. He completely couldn't dissuade them, so he allowed them to conceive first. Sai, what kind of existence is a descendant to me? Duque sighed. The social environment was bad and the birth rate was low. This was almost a sociological conclusion. Really, you were the one who encouraged birth in the Alliance. You even created a Valentine's Day back then, You even wasted my expression. Faced with Jaina's ridicule, Duque was powerless to retaliate. In the arena below, the mammoth man boss Gamak, who only had 1 attack mode, had already been defeated. Immediately after was Photophobia and Sourthroat. These were 2 large worms without eyes. They had a pair of bull horns on their heads, and on both sides were neatly curved sharp horns. They were like centipedes, but centipedes had legs that could move while Photophobia had spikes. Their backs were full of porcupines. Simply put, one was a fire worm while the other was a poisonous worm. Their appearance caused quite a bit of chaos among the allied warriors, but it was only to the extent of creating chaos. After killing the 2 worms, the 3rd giant monster, Ice Roar, appeared. This was a giant northern gorilla with a pair of curved goat horns on its head, blue skin, and white fur all over its body. Although it had extraordinary brute force and could also turn people into popsicles within the range of the cone, its strength was completely insufficient in front of the warriors who were gradually working together. Soon Ice Roar was also killed. Victory! Let's cheer for our warriors. Millhouse stirred up the emotions of the audience very well. After all, this was a warrior group formed by the Alliance and the Horde. It was always easy to make people's blood boil when they saw a powerful creature that was larger than themselves. Thunderous cheers rang out incessantly. After a short break, the 2nd round of the trial began. When a short dwarf mage stepped into the middle of the arena, Duque immediately recognized that this was one of the 2 dwarves who wanted to fight with Brainless Roar. Hello everyone, I am the Radiant Moon Dwarf Warlock Wilfred. Now, I will conduct a slightly more dangerous summoning ceremony. What is about to be summoned will be a powerful elite demon. I cannot be sure how ferocious this demon will be. Everyone please be careful. Wilfred's words caused the members of the warrior group to break out in cold sweat and clench the weapons in their hands. Only Duque, who was sitting on the high platform, revealed a thought-provoking expression. What's wrong? Jaina asked. Nothing, I just thought of something. In the original space and time, this next battle would be the product of an accident. Wilfred intended to summon an ordinary demon to fight against the players, but he accidentally summoned King Galaxus, the mid-tier void lord of the Eridar race, and was killed by his own summoned creature. At that time, the player's mission was to subdue this demon leader who had intruded. However, in this life, Duque chuckled. Duque really wanted to see with him here, which demon lord would dare to touch the tigers, but when the 3 leaders of the Burning Legion were temporarily dead, Dumuk even secretly hid all of his energy waves, hiding his divine body in the void crack, leaving only a mirror image of truth that was exactly the same as his real body. Under Wilfred's spell, 6 red demonic claws appeared out of thin air. At first, they were hexagonal and tore open a hexagonal portal that looked like a Coke bottle. It was narrow at the top and wide in the middle. The portal used for summoning was huge. The foul stench of evil energy that came from the portal could be felt from 10 miles away. However, 10 seconds passed, 1 minute passed, and not a single ghost came out. Chapter 1664. Ah. My dear master, a superior demon may be arrogant, but it depends on who he's talking to. Planet Azeroth has become a taboo topic among the Void Lords. Unless it's safe, anyone with a brain won't be stupid enough to come here. Duque felt a slight pain in his balls when he heard the seductive voice in his soul connection. A second female voice sounded from the soul link. Although the style was similar, this voice had a more imperial air. My master, the weave you've set up in this area is too high level. Any high-ranked demon would be able to sense such a surging mana reaction. Who doesn't know that the one who killed the 3 leaders of the Burning Legion is the demigod of the weave, Duke Marcus? That's right, the one speaking to Duque was naturally the 2 high-ranking female demon sisters who had betrayed the Burning Legion, the Eridar twins. The high-ranking warlock Aless was still hiding in the tribe, while Queen Saloras had been assigned the task of guarding against the plague by Duque. She had secretly followed Duque to Northrend and hid near the arena. On the scene, a funny scene happened. It seemed that the Burning Legion's morale would be weakened if they didn't send some cannon fodder after such a large portal. So, the Legion sent a demon. It was a rather large Doombringer. It looked majestic and imposing. As soon as it appeared, it gave the allied warriors a show of strength. It directly threw 8th group shadow arrow. The point was that this guy was kicked here. Under the scan of Duque's system elf, he could clearly see that King Galaxus' left leg had kicked the Doomguard Gazurika's butt. On the other hand, Mr. Gazurika was AF * King Rare Elite. He wasn't even a Void Lord. He was a complete tragedy. The portal closed and Duque wasn't interested in taking another look. If the allied warriors couldn't even deal with this guy, then Duque would definitely punish them by making them swim in a cesspit. Jaina was already laughing so hard that her stomach hurt. Alright, I'll go back and warn Wilfred. If it weren't for us, he would have been killed by his own summoned creature. Yes, Duque replied casually before asking Salolas in his soul, how's the situation on your side? Master's intelligence is indeed impressive. That guy just came ashore from the south side of the Dragonbone Waste. He's using the tribe's dock, and his team has more than 100 barrels of unknown substances. Duque ordered, continue to monitor them and see if there are any places along the way that are suitable to make a move. Saloras was rather surprised. Aren't you going to catch a big fish? For example, the Sun King. Duque's voice turned cold. Remember your identities. I only need you to do things and report to me. Everything else is superfluous. Almost at the same time, 2 waves of soul punishment traveled through the void and reached the Eridar twins. On 2 different continents, Gemini simultaneously curled up into a ball like a shrimp in pain. Master, spare me. We've overstepped our boundaries. Duque would not be nice to these demon sisters who were good at currying favor. The Gemini were not the kind of people who would open a dye shop just because he showed them some respect. They would constantly take the opportunity to test Duque's reaction and bottom line, walking the line between profit and taboo. Perhaps under the pressure of the Burning Legion, they would not really want to rebel, but they had been doing this for at least 20,000 years. This kind of habit had long been ingrained in their bones and souls. If he did not teach them a lesson, they would take over at any moment. As Duque dealt with the Eridar twins, the battle below had already ended without any suspense. This is the so-called Crusade trial? Isn't it too light? Are there no more exciting opponents? Below, the orc warrior Nahok spread his arms and let out a heroic voice. When the nearby audience heard this, they also joined in the uproar. After all, a seemingly mediocre demon would not be able to excite the audience. Wilfred was dumbfounded. He did not know that he had already walked through the gates of hell. I'm working according to Milhouse's ideas. Why are you booing me? The silly Pharaoh Milhouse also looked a little embarrassed. He ran over to Duque and asked, This? Lord Commander, should I get someone to summon a stronger demon? Beside him, Jaina chuckled. It would be fine if he was not here. He is the man who killed Archimonde and killed Jaden with his own hands. The demons would have to be out of their minds to send a lord over. Only then did the 2 dwarves look like they had a sudden realization. Beside them, Varrock was stunned and then immediately smiled bitterly. A hero to oneself, an enemy to the enemy. Duque could be considered to have a different kind of fierce reputation. Next wave, Duque ordered. Milhouse's voice quickly echoed in the arena. Next, the third wave of the test is coming. This time it is a real test. Not only combat power but also the ability to make decisions on the spot. This pair of strange evil spirits easily killed 3 high-level holy knights and annihilated an entire platoon of soldiers. In the end, one of the great 5 silver sages, Gavin Rad, and the chief Drenii holy knight, Maralad, worked together to capture them. They represent the strange power of the Lich King. They represent the extreme of evil, warriors of the allied army. Are you ready to face the unknown challenge? It had to be said that this silly dwarf was quite provocative when it came to speeches. Of course, this was on the premise that his sharp voice could easily cause people to lose their composure. Come. The Alliance warrior, Sakajar, and the Horde warrior, Nahok, both shouted in unison. The two lightly knocked their weapons against each other, indicating that the two had long since put aside their previous enmity. At least in this trial, they were prepared to cooperate sincerely. Just as Milhouse was about to announce the start of the battle, Duque suddenly said, "Milhouse, you go down and join the battle too." Duque's order was amplified by magic. Naturally, everyone was surprised. Even the Master of Ceremonies wanted to participate. What was going on? "Sir Commander, isn't this trial meant to test the new powerhouses? I'm just a dwarf with a better tongue." With that, Milhouse even showed off his Morning Star Wizard badge. Duque did not say anything. He did not know what this silly dwarf was planning, but this did not stop him from casting a spell. Magician's Foot. To put it bluntly, this small spell is just a trick similar to the Magician's Hand. It gathers arcane energy in midair and forms the shape of a large foot. Milhouse let out a strange cry and immediately used Flash, trying to escape the attack range of this foot. Chapter 1665. However, if he could escape, Duque would write his name backwards. The mage's foot was like a maggot in a bone, accurately kicking the dwarf's butt and sending him into the arena. Ouch! The dwarf let out an exaggerated scream, then got up from the ground holding his waist. My old bones. Even if you're the commander of the Alliance, you can't beat an old man like this, can you? Milhouse was trying to gain sympathy. Duque laughed. Pretentious. Keep pretending. I really can't see that you're deliberately suppressing your strength to avoid being given a real position in the Alliance and being trapped in the military so that you can't take risks? Even your white beard is dyed. Get out of here or I'll teach you a lesson. Duque exposed Milhouse's secret. No matter how thick-skinned the silly dwarf was, he could not help but blush. Avoiding military service could be a big or small matter. With the current shortage of mages, in principle, all Dalajan mages held positions in the military. Once war broke out, they would be conscripted to the front lines according to the priority of their positions. Generally speaking, other than the Dalajan administrators, specialized magic researchers, and the professors and lecturers of the magic academies, no one was an exception. Radiant Moon mages were not cabbages. Even now, the personal guards of many kings or leaders were only at the Radiant Moon level. A Radiant Moon pharaoh like Milhouse would at least be a brigadier general in the Alliance military. Now this weird midget had a bitter look on his face. His expression was no different from that of a wronged wife. Unfortunately, after everyone knew that this guy was hiding his strength, no one pitied him. On the big magic screen, everyone saw his funny look and burst into laughter. It had to be said that this dwarf had some ideas. This madman had actually connected his ice and fire elemental magic circuits, using the principle of ice and fire to counteract each other. Originally, by doing this, even if he didn't blow up his own magic circuit, he would still be able to create a compound spell like Frostfire Arrow. However, this guy had perfected the magic power conversion. Using his more powerful arcane circuit, he transferred the ice and fire elements back into the magic gem. That's right. By constantly releasing his own magic power, he was forcefully suppressing his own magic waves. If Duze was not a transmigrator and knew that Milhouse Mana Storm was not a weakling, he would not have used his demigod elemental sense to sense the flow of magic in his body. Otherwise, he would have been fooled and thought that this dwarf was just a sky mage. The funny thing was that this guy didn't give up and continued to hide. His elemental undulations rippled out, and everyone could sense the increase in his mana. However, it was only at the peak of the Morning Star realm. Of course, as a member of this warrior team, he was definitely of an outstanding standard. Since it was an order from the Supreme Commander, no one minded. Just focus on attacking the enemy. You don't have to control the battlefield. After all, we haven't worked together before. Alliance's captain Shagar arranged. Alright. In any case, mages didn't cause any trouble and were pure damage output. They were a large cannon. On the other side, another dwarf, Wilfred, took over the role of the master of ceremonies. He announced loudly, Alright. The brave warriors of the allied forces are about to face the next wave of tests. They are the terrifying undead sisters, the Wagri twins. On the battlefield, one black and one white, two undead in the form of angels wearing black and white armor appeared. Milhouse had started to cause trouble. Wait, I need to make some preparations. You guys go first, I'll make some water. With that, he hid at the back of the team and began to cast water-making spells and food-making spells. He didn't care that his voice was amplified by magic and could be heard by everyone present. Shagar's eyes widened. Damn, is this a lazy person with a lot of *T&P? Or does he specialize in causing trouble? But the enemy had already appeared. As the main tank, Shagar could only ignore this crazy dwarf and rush forward to take on the black enemy, the darkness evil messenger Edith. On the other side, the orc warrior Nahok took on the light evil messenger Fiora. On the other side, Milhouse didn't care whether the battle in front of him was earth-shattering or bloody. He didn't care what the hell those strange pure white or pure black light balls were. He continued to talk to himself like a lunatic. Great, next I need some protective spells. This guy stood up and cast Ice Barrier and Magic Shield on himself. Just when the audience of more than 10,000 thought that this dwarf, who had been taken care of by Duque, was about to start fighting, he sat down again. Of course, I need to replenish my mana first. You guys will see my power. Just wait a little longer. With that, he sat down to drink water to recover his mana and eat bread to recover his health. *CK. This works too? The audience's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Only Duke could see through the System Elf's elemental analyzer that this genius gnome was actually adjusting his own magic circuits at lightning speed, straightening out the previously messed up magic circuits and reconnecting them once again. Gianna, do you see it? I see it. Gianna smiled like a flower. This clever Queen Kurtiras was probably already thinking about how to abduct Milhouse to her side. On the other side, the allied warriors in the fierce battle ahead had gradually found their way and discovered the secret of the Wagri twins. We can't let these two stay together. If they are of the same color, their damage to me and vice versa will be reduced. If they are of the opposite color, their damage will be increased. What kind of move is this? Damn it, they've replied. In order to fully achieve the effect of the trial, other than the two gods who had captured the Wagri twins, the information of the enemy was completely confidential to the trial takers. This was the only way to achieve the effect of the trial. After all, on the battlefield, when encountering an unknown enemy, there would not be so many transmigrators to give you spoilers. When facing an enemy that could not be taken down in a short period of time, how to see through the characteristics of the enemy's attacks and how to find the enemy's weakness was a problem that every professional had to consider. In the professional training classes, as well as in the military schools that specialized in training alliance commanders, there were professionals who taught newbies how to think and how to find their own way to defeat the enemy. Duque was very satisfied to see that this temporarily formed team of warriors had quickly stabilized their footing after the initial panic and confusion. The healers worked hard to restore the team's health, and the damage dealers began to carefully look for the enemy's weakness. Although from Duque's point of view, the team's situation was a little bad because of the high consumption of magic power, it was precisely because he considered this possibility that Duque kicked the damn dwarf mage into the field. As expected, the sharp dwarf voice sounded again. Okay, I'm ready. So, which idiot is ready to get a good beating now? Chapter 1666. The dwarf was irascible. Those who provoked Pharaoh would be in danger. According to the needs of the plot, only important characters would have their own background music. However, what made Duque not know whether to laugh or cry was that when he saw the majestic Milhouse, whose body was surging with elements that attracted attention like a spotlight, the first thing that came to Duque's mind was actually the melody of The Return of the King. What a joke. So even a lunatic could have a moment of brilliance? One could say that Milhouse was unreliable and one could use all kinds of reasons to attack him, but this guy really had a brain. When the light evil messenger Fiora opened her shield and was about to cast Twin Coordination to recover her and the dark evil messenger's soul power, vitality, Milhouse made a small jump and separated his left and right hands, one in front and one behind as if he was stretching them. In the next second, The frost elements that were so strong that they definitely exceeded the level of the current warrior group suddenly exploded on his body, forming a small tornado. A white frost arrow broke through the chaotic atmosphere and headed straight for Fiora's face. Pah! The powerful magic attack not only destroyed Fiora's shield, but the aftermath of the magic attack also directly hit Fiora's face, causing her to have a short pause in her spell casting. Once again, Milhouse was the first to react. He directly flashed to close the distance between them, and his freed right hand directly went up to cast an anti-magic spell. The deliberately condensed chaotic magic dispelled the twin coordination that was about to be completed. The Waglio twins' attempt to recover was directly interrupted. When people of the same color stand together, there seems to be a bonus. The healer is of the same color, and the attacker is of a different color. Duque did not expect that Milhouse would actually be able to hold the entire scene in one go. This scene really surprised Duque. The potential that was displayed did not necessarily mean that it would be realized as strength. Under the combined effect of a series of internal and external factors such as hard work, mentality, willpower, and opportunities, the potential would grow into strength. Although the group of Alliance and Horde warriors present seemed to be very powerful, as if all of them could grow to the level of the 5 Silver Saints or Sal, unfortunately, as far as Duque knew in the original history, no one here could grow to that level. Even Milhouse, who was still active until the end of Return of the Legion, was just a follower, not a big shot in the Justice camp. However, since Duque could change so many people's fates, he wouldn't look at the people around him the same way he used to. It seemed that the shackles of history had been broken by Duque's arrival. Just look, in history the Van Cleef father and daughter duo were just unranked bosses, but now they were the top 2 thieves in the Alliance. Sylvanas, who should have died and become the Forgotten Queen, not only lived well, but also became a demigod. Onyxia, Vashch, and the other villains who should have left the scene had all become Duque's subordinates. Duque would not be too surprised if someone like Milhouse grew to become a heaven-defying monster. He was a demigod and the highest commander of the Alliance. Sitting in this position, he naturally had to act like a high-ranking person. He would not participate in a trial of this level. He was like a real god, sitting above the clouds and quietly watching the efforts and struggles of mortals. Only existences at the same level of demigod or above were worthy of Duque taking action. For example, suddenly there was an abnormal roar coming from the ground. Immediately, a violent shock spread to every corner of the arena. The ground of the arena where the Wagri twins were fighting fiercely collapsed. What the hell? What happened? Save! All the Alliance warriors together with the Wagri twins, along with thousands of tons of large and small gravel, fell into a seemingly bottomless pit. Duque suddenly stood up and shouted angrily, "How dare you!" Of course, he knew that the final boss of the Crusader trial was the great beetle king Enubalak. This former king of the Spider Kingdom, Ijanirab, had become one of the most powerful minions of the Scourge army after being killed and enslaved by Arthas. However, under normal circumstances, he would wait until the trial taker defeated the Wagri twins before taking action. Now, he obviously wanted to disrupt this step. Perhaps it could be said that this ability to seize the opportunity to launch a fatal blow was quite admirable. However, you little worm, do you really think that I don't exist? Duque was furious. With just a thought, Duque's subordinate, the wind elemental envoy Thaddeus, appeared from the magic net. Thaddeus, who was wearing a full set of armor, waved his semi-illusory arm and summoned small tornadoes that enveloped every warrior. The divine emissary Alonsis Fail's illusory image also appeared. He waved his staff and opened an incomparably huge holy word, shield, using holy light to form a barrier between the arena and the stands, preventing the flying gravel from hitting the audience. At the same time, the frost emissary Saffron's illusory image charged out of the magic net. It followed the deep black hole and charged towards the bottom of the cave at a speed faster than a freefall. It could completely feel the anger of its master, Duque. It wanted to teach the undead bug king who dared to appear early a lesson. Just as an intense frost dragon breath was brewing in Saffron's chest, an even larger skeletal dragon claw suddenly broke through the vertical wall of the cave and grabbed Saffron's neck. Roar! Saffron struggled instinctively, but a huge skeletal dragon head that was at least twice its size leapt out of the deep black hole and bit its vitals. Saffron immediately let out a mournful cry, and then its body started to dissipate. Saffron was already dead. In essence, it was a spectral dragon, but because it had elementalized, it had gained a physical body. Ordinary physical attacks could not hurt it at all. However, at this moment, Everyone in the magic net, including Duque, could feel the pain in Saffron's soul. Not only was this mysterious opponent stronger than Saffron, he had even managed to injure it on a spiritual level. The part of the magic net system that Saffron was in charge of almost went out of control, forcing the demon emperor Vec, Lor and Khadgar, the manager of the magic net, to rush to the rescue. Who is it? This time even Duque's expression changed. Supported by a gust of wind, Duque hovered above the huge hole and looked down. He saw a dragon head that emitted a blue glow. It had dull scales and withered dragon skin that seemed to be stuck to its bones, as well as a pair of eyes that were filled with the light of the netherworld. Duque's pupils constricted to the size of a pin. His facial muscles twitched and his voice was bone-chilling. Amidst the chattering of his teeth, Duque finally said the opponent's name, Ma. Go. See. Chapter 1667. Malago suddenly laughed out loud. Ha! Destroy me? Don't make me laugh. You despicable person, didn't you take advantage of my mental weakness to seize control of the elements? Now I'm not crazy. I just want to ask, how can you beat me? The strong elemental fluctuations shook the entire atmosphere in the arena. Even after Malygos died and became a Dracolic, this characteristic did not weaken. Seizing control of the elements was a test of a pharaoh's basic skills. Although it was basic skills, it tested many things: elemental affinity, understanding of the habits and structure of the elements, the level of instilling the will into the elements. It did not make sense at all. Logically speaking, if one wanted to attack the Wormrest Temple or launch a surprise attack elsewhere, one should have gathered all the superior forces. For a demigod like Duque, who had powerful teleportation abilities, the feint meant almost nothing. In the eyes of the other pharaoh, Duque's control of the frost elements around him was snatched away almost immediately, and he looked miserable. Huh. What are they doing? Humiliating? Perhaps. But as long as I destroy you, I will regain my dignity. Getting angry with a lunatic would only make one as tasteless as a lunatic. Duque would not do such a thing. Unknowingly, the huge pit in the arena actually showed signs of being sealed up again. Not far away, Salyafar and Big Salyafar had already pulled out their weapons, but they were a little embarrassed. Although Malygos, who was now a Dracolic, was below the hole along the edge of the arena, they only had one chance to jump down. If they missed it, they would fall into the bottomless hole below. Duque scolded, "Thief? A dragon aspect who betrayed the Pantheon, abandoned his duty, and threw himself into the arms of the undead, and you have the nerve to say that the Titan rune is his? Stop making me laugh, okay?" Whether it was in the original history or in the game, Arthas was just a nest, hiding in the Ice-Crown Fortress and waiting to be overthrown. The cold wind that seemed to blow forever stopped, and in its place was a turbulent flow of elements that seemed to be in a somewhat violent state. Right now, the situation of king against king and general against general could only be considered as restraining each other. Alexstrasza. Malygos has become a Dracolic. He's here with me. Duque narrowed his eyes and secretly sent a magic message to the crowd to evacuate the arena. Pa, 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 pa. The huge icicles were continuously shattered, and then turned into ice shards, accumulating at the entrance of the pit. The physiological structure of the human body was not naturally formed for magic. However, Malygos gave Duque this feeling. It was as if every cell in his body, as well as his soul, could be filled with elements and cause the elements to resonate. The question was, what was Arthas trying to do? Duque was too lazy to continue. He spread his hands and said, "Sigh. Arguing with a psychopath, I only did it because I suddenly had a brain cramp." All right. Malygos, since you dare to appear in front of me as an undead, are you ready to be destroyed by me forever? You didn't expect it to be me, did you? Despicable thief. Duke Marcus. In the huge pit, Malygos raised his head high and stared at Duque in the air with eyes that were like hellfire. Like a spider web, the veins of the magic net crisscrossed in the air behind Duque. Different magic net channels emitted different colors of light. Both sides knew that they were both demigods. Whether it was the Red Dragon Queen's side or Duque's side, they could not do anything to each other in a short period of time. Once the battle dragged on, it would turn into a decisive battle. Although this was the periphery of the Ice-Crown Glacier, it was not as effective as the Ice-Crown Fortress. Hundreds of hands of magic appeared in midair and enveloped the dark pit in a hemispherical shape. Arcane missiles the size of water tanks formed a heavy rain that poured into the pit. The real battle was between Duque and Malygos. *CK. As expected of a veteran demigod. Duque could not help but curse. Dozens of sharp icicles the size of pillars shot into the sky like rockets, shooting at Duque in the air. Of course the second fool was not a weak lowly. At least she would not cause trouble everywhere like she was now. Duque had the system genie. With more than 1,000 threads, he could independently inject different willpower to snatch frost elements. However, in terms of elemental affinity, Duque naturally lost. Duque was called a thief because he had taken the Titan rune that originally belonged to Malygos. However, Duque did not feel guilty at all. The ports of the 4 elemental realms suddenly enlarged so that more elements could enter the magic net. It could not be helped. Beastmen could not fly. The magic net that should not have been visible to the naked eye became visible due to the extremely exaggerated elemental charge. Betrayal? I am clearly the master of all magic and elements in Azeroth. You damned thief, you took advantage of my moment of inattention to steal the secrets of magic and create the magic net that blasphemes the magic elements of this world. The real traitor is you. Malygos roared angrily. Compared to Malygos, Duque was more like a mountain king in the frost elemental realm, while the former Blue Dragon King was a natural king, the master of the entire frost elemental realm. Pursing his lips, Duque waved his hands quickly. Combined with the incantations in his spiritual sea, Duque began his counterattack. Bastard. Duque suddenly realized something and became furious. Just as Duque saw Malygos, who was either an undead dragon or a Dracolic, appear, he received an urgent message from Alexstrasza. Duque, come over immediately. Arthas has appeared. He's standing on the inner side of the Gate of Divine Wrath, confronting me. The butterfly effect was interesting at times, but it was also a pain in the ass at other times. Almost as soon as the Spectral Dragon King finished speaking, Duque suddenly felt that he had lost control of the frost elemental realm in this area. The only one who could help Duque was Jaina. She summoned an ice pedestal and supported herself in mid-air. However, this pedestal was not safe as it could be smashed by Malygos at any time. Ah! You claim to be a demigod of the magic net, how can you allow your control of the frost elemental realm to be stolen? Don't you feel ashamed? Malygos laughed maniacally as he waved his skinless, almost bony front claws. Chapter 1668. Hehe. Have you finally realized it? It's too late, Duke Marcus. Malygos' voice came from below. That's right. You're so happy to have troops stationed at the edge of our territory. Killing a bunch of new heroes from the Alliance army should be enough to make you feel a little heartache. As soon as Malygos' voice fell, all the high-ranking officers of the Alliance army, including Duque, felt a toothache. What an uproar. Duque couldn't accuse Malygos of being a demigod for being so shameless. What the former Blue Dragon King was doing was the same as what Duque wanted to do after spring, weakening the enemy's war potential. Malygos was only here to restrain Duque. The huge and thick layer of ice cut off the connection between the cave and the outside world. The frost element that Malygos had absolute dominance there even rejected the entry of arcane elements, not to mention opening the portal. Even if Duque wanted to save them, he couldn't save Nahok and the others. Almost at the same time, cries for help sounded everywhere in Duque's magic communication network. The entire Alliance army surrounding the Icecrown Glacier area had reports of being attacked by the Calamity army. Most of them were ambushed by gargoyles known as Fortress Watchers. These dark magic creatures with the ability to fly at high speed used the blizzard as cover to directly cross the defensive airspace of the front line and attack the Alliance army on the second line. Not only that, countless ice bridges extended down from the cliffs of the Icecrown Glacier area, forming grooves that looked like slides. The stitched abominations, which were sewn from more than 10 corpses, flew along these ice slides directly to the various Alliance army positions. The fat abominations were directly thrown over in the form of an air raid, forcing the Alliance army to fight in close combat. Just this alone made Arthas' surprise attack a great success. Counterattack. Counterattack. Push the enemy back. Even though the Alliance army commanders were shouting at the top of their lungs. In the harsh snowstorm that Arthas had deliberately condensed and made it impossible to see anything 5 meters away, it was completely extravagant to form a formation. Fortunately, the communication system of the Alliance was supported by the Weave and had not been destroyed. Otherwise, the situation would have been even worse. Even so, they were forced to fight in close combat. It was conceivable that the Allied forces would suffer heavy losses this time. Even though his face was ashen, Duque still managed to squeeze the words out of his mouth through gritted teeth. Arthes, well done. The Alliance camp was filled with fear and panic. We can't hold on any longer. An Alliance soldier shouted. The Alliance commanders shouted at the top of their lungs in the howling wind, "Retreat! Retreat! No, we're not leaving. For the glory of the Alliance." The leader of the recruits had just finished speaking when he was slapped by his commanding officer. "Idiot. If they all died here, they would all become immortals, which in turn would increase the burden of the Alliance in the future. Harming his own comrade. Let's go. All of you go. Don't hold up the rear. Run as many as you can." The second lieutenant of the Alliance fiercely ordered. "Then what about you, sir?" The recruit was a little confused. "Someone has to collect the bodies of our brothers. Collect the corpse. Cut the crap. All of you get lost. Don't be a hindrance here." The second lieutenant of the Alliance kicked the recruits and chased them away while cursing and beating them. As he watched the recruits disappear into the wind and snow behind him, the second lieutenant of the Alliance lit a cigarette with a windproof lighter. Unfortunately, it was extinguished after just a bit. "Sigh, brothers." In front of his eyes, many swaying figures appeared. Every single one of them wore shining silver armor with a blue background and golden edges of a lion's head pattern. It was just that eye-catching. However, these faces that were incomparably familiar all became incomparably sinister. Some of them were missing half a face, some of them had their heads hung because half of their throats had been bitten off, and there were even more who didn't have complete limbs. They could only drag their broken upper bodies as they crawled on the ground, leaving behind long and shocking bloody traces. In front of the magic communication device, the second lieutenant of the Alliance picked up the microphone. "Hello. Front line, position N567, Second Lieutenant John Ganner calling for Mountain Eagle." "Mountain Eagle is here. N567, please speak." The image of a female Alliance soldier's head lit up in the magic mirror. "Position N567 has already fallen. I had the last group of soldiers withdraw. I am already the last living person in this position. If you don't want this place to become a paradise for the undead, please fire at me as soon as possible." The female Alliance soldier stared blankly for a long time before replying with a trembling voice, "Mountain Eagle understands. Second Lieutenant Ganner, do you have any last words?" "Long live the Alliance." After lightly saying these words, the second lieutenant of the Alliance, who wasn't much older than the recruits, was torn apart by his former comrade and dragged backwards. From start to finish, the female soldier saw that on the face of the second lieutenant of the Alliance, until the very last moment, there was still a faint smile. 3 minutes later, a fierce rumbling sound rang out from the artillery position behind position N567. The berserk artillery fire instantly drowned out the entire position, breaking down all of the humanoid figures in the entire position into components. At this moment, Duque's heart was like a raging storm, rising and falling uncontrollably. It had been a long, long time since the Alliance had suffered such a loss. Relying on their memories of history, the Alliance's campaigns had always been successful. Compared to the results of the battle, their losses were almost negligible. This made Duque and even the entire Alliance involuntarily enter a state of almost blind optimism. Today Arthas had taught them a good lesson. Duque didn't know how many soldiers they would lose in this surprise attack, but it was definitely more than 10,000. This was the largest single battle loss since Duke became the Alliance's commander-in-chief. It wasn't to the extent of hurting their muscles and bones, but it was definitely enough to be recorded in the history of the war for all the people of the Alliance to remember and learn from. "Have I been slapped in the face?" Duque smiled bitterly. Onyxia came. She used the ultra-high temperature of deep breath to burn the thick layer of ice. Coupled with Duque's fire magic, this was only able to suppress Maligos by a little. The layer of ice in the pit of the arena was decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, everyone knew that at this pace, by the time they forced Maligos to escape, the corpses of the Alliance warriors, led by Milhouse, would have turned cold. Duque could even foresee that when they killed their way to the bottom of the pit, they probably wouldn't even be able to collect their corpses. With Arthas's vengeful personality, he would definitely turn these warriors into immortals and place them in Ice Crown Fortress to wait for the arrival of the Alliance army after strengthening them. Perhaps, there would be another lich called Milhouse Mana Storm. Just as Duque's thoughts were running wild, a shrill scream suddenly came from under the ice. "Bastard! What are you doing? Who are you?" "Ah." Chapter 1669. If it weren't for the holy light under the ice that was as bright as the sun, Duke would definitely think that Malygos was a lunatic. His dragon goo had split into two wills and then directed and acted on his own. It was true that Malygos was the pharaoh of all elements, but his power definitely did not include the holy element. It was obvious that a top-tier holy knight had ambushed Malygos. This holy light was definitely not ordinary. Even Riadaline and Merid, who were known as the top holy knights in the alliance, were slightly inferior to this holy light. Duke's head was about to explode, but he still could not figure out which fellow's holy light was so powerful. Moreover, this holy light gave him an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Unfortunately, due to the extremely surging and evil frost elemental energy of Malygos, his perception was rather blurry. Even the system elf could not give an accurate judgment. Could it be that Turalian and the others have returned? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Duke muttered to himself. The Dragon Lich's crazy voice came from below again. No. I am the king of magic of Azeroth, I am the original god of magic. All elements must be under my control of the magic net. Oh no, go back? Yes, my master. As Duke, Jaina, Onyxia, and Salyafar watched in astonishment, Malygos' elemental reaction left the arena at high speed through the underground tunnel. Malygos ran away with his tail between his legs, and the thick layer of ice was no longer a problem. The doubts in his heart grew stronger. Duke could not wait to break the ice. He left the Black Dragon Princess here to continue melting the ice while he teleported to the lowest level of the cave with Jaina. Stepping out of the portal, the first thing that came into view was the huge corpse of the Arachne King, Anubalak. This four-legged, two-pincer beetle king's evil soul had already dissipated. The double-headed sword that was imbued with a holy aura was the weapon that gave it the fatal blow. Duke recognized it immediately. This was the Ashkandi sword of the Brotherhood. There was no mistaking the scarlet sword hilt and the two red dragon heads that formed the sword's edge. Although this item had considerable historical significance, no one in the current Alliance heroes would ever use this low-level epic weapon again. Soon, Duke found the answer he was looking for. Duke's eyes widened. He almost thought that his eyes were deceiving him. Even though the weathering of old age had already covered his face, even though the pressure of time had made this old man a little hunchbacked, Duke could still recognize him at a glance based on the iconic white armor with red edges. Alexandros. That's right, standing in the middle of the dark cave was an old friend of Duke's, old Mograine. Why are you here? Aren't you retired? While Duke asked, he finally noticed the tall, stalwart figure beside old Mograine, who was smiling bitterly. It was a typical Death Knight. Looking at the Death Knight's face that was 70% similar to the young Mograine, Duke understood everything. I didn't expect it to be you, Darian. Duke sighed. It was a mess. It was a F***king mess. Sometimes, Duke had to admire his own ability to stir up trouble. Because of his appearance, Azeroth's history had already been turned upside down. Old Mograine had retired, but he was still full of vigor. He had retired because he was disheartened. After all, the betrayal of his eldest son, Reynold, and the murder of his second son, Darian, with his corpse taken away had deeply affected old Mograine. Since old Mograine had appeared here without a word and with his youngest son who had turned into a Death Knight, there was only one answer. Answer me, Darian Mograine, have you broken free from the Lich King's shackles? Yes, your excellency Duke Marcus. Darian knelt on one knee, held the helmet in his left hand, and lightly touched the ground with his right hand as he saluted Duke. Duke looked around and saw the Alliance warriors who were still relatively spirited. He also saw the Death Knights standing at the side with their two-handed greatswords in their hands. He also saw the Wagri twins who had turned into soul dregs. Duke was even more certain of his judgment. All right. I'm not an unreasonable guy who sticks to the rules. Tell me the story of you and your subordinates. Thank you, your excellency Marcus. Darian's cold face squeezed out a happy smile. In the original history, old Mograine died early due to the betrayal of his eldest son Reynold. After his father's death, Darian participated in and led the Silver Dawn's attack on Naxxramas. He defeated his father in battle and took back the fallen Ashbringer. Then, under the guidance of his father's soul, he went to see his brother Reynold. However, after the brothers met, Reynold attacked Darian without any explanation. At this time, old Mogaine's soul appeared and killed Reynold. Darian did not know the ins and outs, but seeing his father's soul kill his brother with his own hands, he was confused. Later, he found his father's good friend, Tyrion Fordring, who told him that only the power of love could release his father's soul. Darien then joined the battle against Arthas and the Scourge. He waved Ashbringer and cut through all the obstacles until he met the culprit, Kel-Thuzad, who had turned his father into a Death Knight. After realizing that his sword could not stop this powerful necromancer, he stopped his horse, thought of his love for his father, and stabbed Ashbringer into his chest. This action summoned 1,000 heroic spirits buried under the chapel, thus defeating the Scourge force. After that, Darien's body was brought back by Kel-Thuzad and turned into a Death Knight. In this life, Darien's experience was not so legendary. After his brother betrayed him, he was killed and directly taken away to become a Death Knight. He did not belong to Kel-Thuzad, but directly belonged to Arthas and was crowned with the title of Great Lord. He led the Akiris Death Knights to guard the Black Front Fortress in the northwest of the Icecrown Glacier. Originally the story would end here. However, things changed because of Duque and Alexstrasza's heavy injuries to Arthas. Darien said in a deep voice, "At that time Your Excellency and the Red Dragon Queen injured Arthas, which made the Lich King's soul shackles on us lessen a lot. However, this was not enough to free us from the Lich King's control. So I used the soul connection and found my father." Chapter 1670. Duque turned his head and glared at Old Emo. "Hey, you really dared to do that?" Old Emo blushed and stammered, "Alas. I've been loyal to Lordaeron for most of my life. I've fought trolls, orcs, demons and undead. If my bloodline caused trouble for the kingdom and the Alliance, I wouldn't be able to rest in peace. So Duque rolled his eyes. "So you sneaked into Northrend and found your way to the Black Edge Knights' camp? Weren't you afraid that you would become the new Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse?" I felt very guilty. I felt sorry for the Alliance. I wanted to report to you alone many times. But I chose to keep the appointment. I waited for Darien outside the Icecrown Glacier." Old Mograine said it casually, but who could understand his feelings? After so many inner struggles, both of his sons had become Death Knights. One was a shameless betrayal, and the other was a temporary sinking that might still have redemption. One was honor, duty and loyalty, and the other was bloodline, feelings and hope. Duque admitted that he didn't know what to do if he exchanged his identity with Mograine. Either choice was not wrong. No matter which choice it was, it could lead to extremely terrifying consequences. If he wasn't a transmigrator, he could never foresee the independence and rise of the Black Edge Knights, let alone the reaction of the Alliance. After all, before this moment, even if the Alliance turned a blind eye to the Horde's undyings, they might not accept a group of Death Knights, even if they were neutral. Old Mograine's gaze seemed to look into the distant past, the time when his two children were still young. "I dedicated half of my life to the kingdom and the rest to the Alliance. I didn't retire until I couldn't fight anymore. I'm ashamed of my selfishness. I don't deserve to be a paladin who spreads the holy light." Old Emo sighed. "When I came to Northrend, I listened to the whispering wind and gazed at the broken world. I looked at the scenery that seemed to be the end of the world. It was like a harsh place where nothing was born, but I felt that the world was so beautiful. It seemed that everything could be started again. I thought that since even an Astrian could break free from the Lich King's shackles, my youngest son should have a chance too." At this point, Old Emo pulled open his breastplate, which contained the latest explosive pack of the Alliance. "I won't let the Alliance soldiers have to face a Death Knight named Alexandros Mograine. If necessary, I will self-destruct. A Death Knight without a body isn't strong." At this moment, Darien lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "Please don't blame my father. This is just the wish of a group of undead who still love the Alliance and desire that their compatriots can still be happy. We don't ask for anything in return. Even if we have to charge towards the Ice-Crown Fortress first and use our destruction to pave the way for the Alliance, we will have no regrets." Duque closed his eyes as if he was deep in thought. Almost at the same time, Duque received the news that the Calamity Troop had begun to retreat. Duque sighed. "I can't promise you anything, but I will give you a chance to state the situation of you and your Black Edge Knights and your wishes in the Alliance's throne conference. Whether or not to accept you or how to treat you will be decided after the leaders of the Alliance vote." "Thank you very much," Mograine and Mograine said in unison. Not taking action on the spot was already giving them face. Convening the throne conference for this actually meant that Duque had given them the green light. Otherwise, even if Duque killed Mograine and Mograine on the spot, no one could say anything wrong. The defensive battle was over. The Alliance's battle line didn't retreat. Instead, Duque ordered to strengthen the defense. The trenches, pillboxes, and other fortifications at the front line were turned on 24/7. The wealthy Duque kept transferring elements from other elemental realms to replenish the energy of the shields. The commanders of the alliance chased the soldiers who were warm out of the barracks and strengthened the fortifications again. The army gathered at the cliffs of Storm and the Crystal Song Forest, while the rest of the areas were patrolled by the wyverns of the Sleeping Dragon Temple. There were also enough reserves left in the Northwind Taiga and other places, ready to counterattack at any time. 3 days later, the throne conference began in Naxxramas. Half of the alliance's leaders attended, while the rest watched and voted through the magic mirror. When Mograine and Mograine gave their speeches, expressing that the Black Edge Knights were willing to fight together with the alliance, the leaders fell into a long silence. Then, it was limited to whispers in the magic communication network. Unexpectedly, the first to speak was William. Is it okay to break the boundary between the dead and the living just like that? Today, the alliance accepted the Death Knights as temporary allies. What about tomorrow? Closer cooperation? And then integration into the alliance? What about the legacy of the kingdom? Accepting the undead would definitely be the biggest reaction from the humans. Perhaps long-lived creatures like the elves, dwarves, gnomes and Draenei didn't feel anything. Didn't they see how Kale, that's waited for thousands of years for an Astrian to die? Was he forced to wait for an extremely long time until something happened? Among the leaders of the 7 great human kingdoms, Kai Zi seemed to be the kind of guy who didn't feel anything about this topic. The problem was that there were still 3 leaders in the alliance who were freaking immortal. If there was an issue of inheritance, it would definitely be between William and Donas, the 2 brothers who had suffered the same fate. They would also be the first to speak. Be it the 2 of them or the other human leaders, they were actually not worried about the Black Edge Knights themselves, but the impact it would cause on the ethics of human society. Donas Trollbane used his finger to tap on his throne for a while before saying, "Commander Marcus, first of all I would like to ask, is it the Alliance's absolute policy to accept more forces that can be accepted?" Duque said resolutely, "The Burning Legion will definitely return. In 10 years, no more than 20 years, a war of survival with Azeroth as the battlefield will begin. I think the scene of Archimonde's arrival and the destruction of the Dalagen is still fresh in most people's minds, right?" Everyone was silent. Magni said, "The tribe accepts the Forgotten Ones because the tribe has the tradition of using Death Knights. But the tribe is not the Alliance. Why do we believe that the Death Knights of the Black Edge Knights won't turn on the Alliance and all the living at the critical moment?" Both Mograine and Big Mograine shuddered at the same time. They couldn't say for sure about this. Chapter 1671. At this moment, Duque stood up. He first filled himself with holy light, and then switched to his shadow form, becoming a pure, black man. Where there is light there will be shadows. In fact, there are already some priests in the Alliance who have completed the switch between holy and shadow forms. We call these priests who focus on attack, shadow priests. Since the power of the shadows can arm our priests and warlocks, why can't we believe in the kindness of a group of Death Knights? Magni shook his head. "I have no intention of targeting this. I think that includes me, the other leaders, and the people. We all need a convincing proof." Duque raised his hand. "All right then. The boundary between life and death is not as clear as everyone thinks. I know that there are more than 1,000 souls sleeping under the Light's Hope Chapel. Let Darien and his Ebon Horsemen face the valiant spirits. If they are recognized by the souls, I believe the people will not have any objections." Duke changed the topic and looked at William and Donas. "As for inheritance, why don't we do it this way? When a person really dies, since he has crossed the boundary between life and death, this person will be defined as losing all assets other than his personal equipment. Unless he still chooses to fight for the Alliance, let him return to dust, dust to dust." William and Donas looked at each other and said at the same time, "Then we have no objections." Seeing that the leaders of the Alliance had almost reached a consensus, Imriel also fell silent. It could be considered as acquiescence. Duque raised his hands and stretched out all his fingers. "Everyone, we don't have much time. The next 10 years will be the most turbulent 10 years for Azeroth. Even if we defeat the Lich King Arthas, there are still many evil existences in this world. For example, there are scattered demons, dark forces that believe in evil cults, and remnants of the Black Dragon race. We will most likely have to face the other 2 ancient gods, Yashaji and Enzoth. We don't have time to relax. So my request to the Alliance is to unite all the forces that can be united, and at the same time, put aside any disputes that might cause conflicts until after the final battle with the Burning Legion. But on the other hand, if we are faced with a situation where we have no choice but to send troops, then we must not hesitate and directly send troops to destroy all the unrest in the bud. Duque clenched his fingers into a fist and smashed it down. It was clearly a simple movement, but because Duque had unintentionally released a small amount of elemental energy, this punch had the power of a warhammer. Something seemed to shatter in the air. Were those the shackles of the soul? Or was it an untimely tradition? No one went back to care. Compared to the fate of the entire race and even the entire planet, these were all trivial matters. As soon as Duque finished speaking, voices of agreement and approval came from the crowd of thrones. The throne meeting ended just like that. Old Mograine came up, his mouth trembling. In the end he could only say, "Thank you." Duque pursed his lips into a smile and patted the old man who had spent most of his life in the army, broken the shackles of fate, and fought for the Alliance until his death. "Don't thank me. If you want to thank me, wait until Darien passes the appraisal of the hero spirit." Old Mo hurriedly said, "That's not a problem. I have already asked His Majesty Menethil, Beneticus, and Tyrion to cast holy light on Darien. The holy light did not destroy the body and soul of him and his men." Without needing Old Mo to press him, Darien had already bowed deeply. "It's all thanks to Sir Marcus' guidance." Duque's smile grew wider. "I have saved myself, and I have also saved many evil souls that the outside world believed had fallen into the abyss. One more is not much, one less is not little. As long as you can pass, it proves that your heart is pure enough, and your will is firm enough. Go. As long as you pass, I will propose to give the Black Blade Knights an independent status." In fact, everyone knew that this was just a formality. Under the witness of tens of thousands of Rotterdam citizens and over 1,000 warriors of the Scarlet Cross Legion and the Silver Dawn, dozens of Death Knights led by Darien withstood the holy water baptism of the Light's Hope Cathedral and the test of the hero spirits. They even miraculously proved that they could also recover from their injuries under the healing of the holy light. At first, Arthas was a little happy that the Calamity Troop had dealt a blow to the Alliance, but the news of the Black Blade Knight's betrayal immediately made him very unhappy. Almost on the same day he received the news, he ordered the Calamity Troop to launch a strong attack on the Black Blade Knight's camp. However, all the attacks became useless with Duque's arrangement. Hodier, the guardian of the Ice Shrine Oder, and Turawan, the Ice Warden, were directly stationed in the Black Blade Knight's fortress according to Duque's request. Not only them, but Calegos, who had just been appointed as the Blue Dragon King, and the few remaining members of the Blue Dragon Legion were also thrown into the Black Blade Knight's air force by Duque. With 3 demigod powerhouses stationed, Arthas could not do anything. The status and combat power of the Guardians were not inferior to that of the dragon aspects, especially Hodier. This kind of cold area was Arthas' home ground, so was it not for Hodier? A surprise attack was fine. However, if the surprise attack failed, Arthas might fall into a protracted battle. When Duque, Alexstrasza, and the others arrived, the 2 fools would not have a chance to return to Icecrown Fortress. It was no exaggeration to say that the Alliance army used Darien's betrayal to drive a ruthless nail into the Ice-Crown Glacier. It became a fishbone in Arthas' throat, making him very uncomfortable. Under normal circumstances, if they did not attack the Gate of Heaven's Wrath, the Alliance army would have to attack from the low terrain of the Crystal Song Forest to the north to enter Ice-Crown Fortress. Then, following the terrain, they would have to go around a huge protrusion in the deep valleys of the plateau before finally reaching Ice-Crown Fortress. Along the way they would also be attacked from the cliffs. This was an absolute taboo for military strategists. Only when they had no other choice would they carry out such an attack. Now, with the recovery of Otter and the betrayal of the Black Blade Knights, the Alliance army was able to suppress the Calamity Army's forces in the northwest and northeast of Ice Crown Glacier. This was especially so for the Shadow Vault, where the Black Blade Knights were. With this nail, the Calamity Army would not be able to station a large number of troops in the Iron Wall Dam to the east of Ice Crown Glacier, the Door of Death Mordressa, and the Door of Desolation to the north, Ordrisa. The only thing that could truly obstruct the Alliance Army's attack was the Door of Fear, Kalisa, in front of Ice Crown Fortress. Of course, they still could not let their guard down because behind the Door of Fear, there were still the Dark Cathedral, and Malakaris, Evil Castle, the 2 bases of the Calamity Army guarding Ice Crown Fortress. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.